Go ahead and bring Goliath on. Ain't no giant, I ain't gon' fire on. Catch a fade, you, I'm wrong, I'm gone. Y'all can catch the wave that I am on. I am icon, y'all are wide wrong. Think that I'm a reconcile bonds, so ain't nothing to it though. This is on me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Keeping it true to form 10 L's into a milli though. But they already knew that those farewell to your opinions. Know that he is something. This is all me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Yeah, keeping it true to form, but they already knew that though. Here we go. I'ma show you who I am. Unbreakable. I'ma make you understand. Watch me escape.
Good evening, Diplomacy fans all around the world. We have an incredibly busy time in diplomacy right now. It's a great time to be a Diplomacy fan. As we speak, the World Diplomacy Championship is being played. Hopefully, some of them are sleeping at least right now. But we've got a lot of action, and we will be covering those games tomorrow. Due to all of the scheduling conflicts and activities going on, we did have to push League Night 1 week back from our normal time. So we'll be covering last weekend's Virtual Diplomacy League, and we'll also be covering the Windy City Weasels Weasel Royale, the championship game for that club, kind of talk about club play, one of my favorite ways to play diplomacy. So tonight, my name is Brian Pravel. I am one of the founders of the Diplomacy Broadcast Network and your host for tonight. I'm joined on stream by David Hood, and we'll be joined momentarily by Karthik Konath. David, welcome to the stream.
Hey there, Brian. It's great to be here. And you are right about it being a great time to be a fan of diplomacy. We're right in the middle of the busy season, really.
Yeah. And I forgot even to mention Gen Con happened a couple weeks ago as well. Renegade offered a ton of support. If you have not already done so, join on the Renegade Discord server. There's a very active diplomacy channel there, along with the Virtual World Diplomacy channel. Those are probably the two biggest ones for the diplomacy community that's not site or event specific. So thank you all for watching tonight. Really appreciate you watching. And tonight I'd like to shout out Dip Chat as always. It's one of my favorite parts of this show. Please join in the fun. Kind of point out things we miss or poke fun, help provide some context if you're one of the players. It's a great way to get involved with the community. So with that, I'm going to welcome Karthik to the stream as well. Karthik, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Glad you could make it. And let's go ahead and preview some of these upcoming events. David, if you will begin, we've got a couple of big tournaments coming up. If you could talk to us about those.
Yeah, we really do. First of all, as far as virtual face-to-face goes, we've got the Summer Classic coming up next weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is when all the 6 preliminary rounds will be played on the VWDC Discord server using Backstabber. That's one of the 2 standalone virtual face-to-face tournaments of the season, the other one being in December. So the Summer Classic is a great opportunity to dive right in and learn about what it's like to play virtual games. We're also, of course, have the Virtual Diplomacy League that we're covering tonight. It's the same type of game, but in a tournament setting instead of a league setting. And then the weekend after that, which is the first weekend of September, with second and third, is the Swiss Diplomacy Championship. It is in a town in Switzerland called Sion. It's about in the southwest part of the country. And that they have also hosted the Swiss tournament and the European Championship at that event before, so that's exciting. Later in September, so the last weekend in September and then the very first day of October, we have Weasel Mood in Chicago. I plan to be there for that one. Can't wait to see my Chicago friends and all of the travelers there for that storied event.
I plan to be there as well.
That, you're going to be there too, Karthik? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Brian, this was a home tournament for him.
Yeah.
The weekend after that is the Liberty Cup in Philadelphia, run by my friend Bill Hackenbrack. I'm actually interviewing Bill, and he'll talk more about the Liberty Cup in my Deadline news show that we're releasing next weekend right here on DBN. And then later in October, So I think the very last weekend of October is the Carnage event in Vermont, run by Dave Moletsky, as always. So just a busy time for tournaments, both the virtual face-to-face next weekend and then all those other face-to-face tournaments after that. Now, I should also mention that's not all that's here. There's also the European Diplomacy Championship, which I believe is in November, but I've forgotten which weekend it is. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with. We do our best to try and make it easy for everybody to keep up with these on our website. You can visit diplobn.com/schedule to get a link to many of these events. If you do happen to see something, reach out to us, post in the comments, or send an email to info@diplobn.com or message one of us on the VWDC Discord server, and we'll make sure we get that event information updated. David, thank you for that recap. I do want to echo the Summer Classic. One of my favorite things about virtual tournaments is that you don't have to have means, either that by funding or by time off or things like that, to travel. So it's a very accessible way. All you really need is an internet connection with a microphone and access to usually Backstabber in order to play the game, and then you can get a tournament-like experience. And one of the best things about the Summer Classic is that all of the organizers have put a lot of effort into making it globally friendly. So there are start times for many different time zones. So they've done their best to really try and make it an opportunity for people to participate around the world. And it's a great way to get that tournament experience, even if you're unable to get on an airplane or drive long distance, don't have to worry about hotels and all of that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I cannot wait to see each of you at Weasel Moot, and hopefully many of our audience will be there as well. It is a fantastic event. Really happy to be there. And David, I'm looking forward to watching the interview with Bill Hackenbrack on Deadline. That is another classic event. I'm glad to see Liberty back in action again. They've been around several years now, and Bill always puts on a good event. All right, well, let's not linger any longer. Let's go ahead and get to our games. So first thing I'll do is pull up our top 10 players by our newly updated Virtual Diplomacy League standings. And here we go. So as of last month, we did our first release of the DBNI standings for this season. We found that it usually takes about 6 months for things to settle in a meaningful way. So that's why we usually release these about halfway through the season. And currently right now, we've got a lot of players, a lot of the top players are in the WDC over in Thailand right now. And so this is, I think, one of the storylines I'm going to be watching tonight is, will we have any of our players make moves while some of the top players are not necessarily participating? So right now we've got Robert Schupa as the top name as far as DBNI standings go for this season, in 9th place. Liam Stokes, Jackson Roberts, Josh Hennessy, Matthew Tatanchi, Cody Green will all be playing tonight. So in our first game, let's go ahead and transition this over. Here we go. And first up, we've got, I clicked the wrong button. Here we go. There it is. VDL 148. All right. I did not do any homework to guess what these names are. So if anyone has any insight as we go, even in chat, let us know. We've got in Austria, we have a player that's new to me. Lumew. Lumew.
I think his name is Simon.
Simon, awesome. Simon, welcome. Thank you for playing. In England, we've got Robert Schupa. Robert qualified for the DBNI top board last season and unfortunately was unable to participate, but a very a newer player to the hobby, but has risen to the top very quickly. In France, we have Jackson Roberts, very frequent VDL player. Germany, we've got Teague Epright from Philadelphia. Italy, we have Fort Wayne, Indiana's Cody Green. Russia, we have a player that's new to me, Bryce. And Turkey, we have Nicholas Lawton. So let's get to our games. And while I'm bringing that up, David, are there any storylines you're going to be watching for in this game?
Yeah, the combination of Robert and Jackson in the West as England and France could be quite a challenge for our friend Teague from Philadelphia, who I may be watching live right now, the show. And we don't know how you did, so don't tell us. But I'll be looking to see how that relationship goes. Those are two experienced players who have played with each other before. And so that might make an interesting situation for the people playing Germany, Russia, and Italy.
All right. Well, spring 1901, David, if you will take the play-by-play, Karthik, you can fill in with color. We are going to move quick tonight in traditional VDL fashion. Let's get to it.
All right. In England, you've got the modified Churchill opening with the Army going to Yorkshire. That's fairly standard. That French opening where the two armies sort of go catterwampus, as we say in parts of the South, that's become a little bit of a unique opening that you sometimes see more online than you do face-to-face. And so virtual being in the middle, here we see it. Looking over at the East, I'm looking to see if there's anything, a particular note there. Not really. You've got sort of standard bounces in English and Black Sea, but I don't remember the last time I saw a bounce in Tuscany. So that is one way to play the Italians. It's essentially the same thing as having an Army Rome hold in addition to Venice hold, which does not give you very much flexibility for the fall. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the move to Gascony Burgundy is the classic zigzag opening. Yeah, it's very popular online. My personal favorite opening. Glad to see it played out here.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Cody's opening as well. We don't set up for the convoy with the Puglia, but it's good. The nice thing about Italy, for the longest time, Italy was viewed as one of the weakest powers, and I think we've seen within the past 10 years or so that is absolutely not the case, especially in an experienced player's hands. They can be extremely powerful, and one of its advantages are that it can play slow. Watch how the rest of the board opens, and then react to that. This could be setting up for something along those lines.
Yes.
Right.
Wow is right. This is one thing you could also be setting up, is sending the army into Trieste and backing up with Venice, sort of a sucker play for the Austrians. I doubt that's arranged. You don't really follow up to Venice if it's arranged. The supported convoy from the English to Belgium stands out to me in the West, in addition to the fact that that Denmark holds, does not bounce Sweden, does not hit North Sea. But perhaps the biggest move in this entire board that stands out at me is Mid-Atlantic to Western Mid, coming from Jackson Roberts. That is a very aggressive anti-Italian move. Sometimes that's done in the context of a triple alliance in the West, but I don't know that Burgundy going to Belgium and all that business, that doesn't really look Tripoli. It might be Tripoli, but it doesn't really look entirely Tripoli. What do you think, Karthik?
I think I don't think it's a triple yet. I think if it was a triple, Denmark would be bouncing Bothnia out of Sweden as well. But the thing that really catches my eye, which I'm surprised you didn't notice, is that Ionian held. It didn't take Tunis.
Oh, gosh. You're right. I didn't notice that. You're right.
It is an interesting opening from Cody. I'm curious to see what the diplomacy there was around that. But I think things are going to be looking really bad for him since he's antagonized the Austrians. The French are coming for him. The Turks had their fleet in Constantinople. Basically, everything that he could hope for isn't going his way, and he made the enemy of the one person who didn't do anything to him. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
The other thing that jumps out at me is the Russian army going into Romania is usually a signal that there's RT cooperation. In other
Right.
words, the ability now for that army to go inland against Austria. It doesn't always work out that way, but at least you got the ability to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, particularly when Black Sea is vacant and there was no bounce. We do see that Teague Epwright has joined us in chat, and he did say that a triple was suggested but declined. So we will watch to see whether perhaps Jackson Roberts, who plays very aggressively, I would say one of the more aggressive players that I have observed. We'll see whether or not he gets over his skis a little bit, or if he's going to be able to make something out of that. Winner of 1901, we've got Army in Paris, double fleets from Robert Schupa. David, I'm going to go to you for this. Obviously, the double fleets is a strong signal. What is that telling you? And are there any other adjustments on this board that stand out?
I love Jackson Roberts to death, but if you're going to send a fleet to Western Med and you don't build a fleet, that is extremely dangerous. And the fact that there are now two English fleets, I mean, it would be bad anyway, but it's really bad when you didn't build a fleet in Bresna. Maybe he didn't think he could, but still, it's a lot. As far as other builds go, the Italian build makes perfect sense. Turkish build makes perfect sense. We neglected to mention that Russia didn't go to Galicia to bounce the Austrians. And so it's a little unclear what that might mean, except that perhaps he wanted the Austrian to go to Galicia to put him out of defensive alignment against the Italians. Might have been a way to do that. Sometimes Galicia is not where you want to be as the Austrians, and it's definitely not when there's supported attack by the Italians into your homeland.
Spring of 1902. Let's find out if we get any additional clarity.
Sure.
Now, Jackson goes back to Mid-Atlantic. Good for him.
Yeah, and I mean, but we do have the English fleet coming down for him hard. We do have Ruhr going to Burgundy with support from the English and the Germans, which is why I think the fleet build would have been much better in Brest, because at least he could have defended against English fleets. Whereas here we have Paris kind of fighting a losing battle and having some guesswork around there, at least in Paris. But once the armies make it in there, it's very, very hard to get it out of Burgundy. So I may probably try to fight a battle to try and hold the seas, which could at least be holdable. But now Mid-Atlantic is guaranteed next year for certain. In the east, we finally have Tunis be captured by the Italians, which at least will give them one more build, while the Austrians are kind of deciding to fight against the Russians, the Italians, and the Turks rather than choosing to fight against any single one of them, opting to tap Romania, tap Bulgaria, and then support the Italians to Aegean while also moving to defend Trieste. It seems a little bit discombobulated there, while the Turks move out hard to Aegean and Eastern, which gives them a position to have a really, really strong RT. Moscow bounces Norway out of St. Petersburg, which may have been arranged, may have just been an interesting little guesseroo. While Warsaw slides to Ukraine, suggesting there may be some sort of peace deal happening between the Russians and the Austrians for now.
Speaking of peace deals, if you've got an Anglo-German attack on France, what does that mean for Russia? In this case, friendship with Germans. And I think what is an arranged bounce with the English. In other words, as between England, Russia, and Germany, there's still not clarity on who's going to go after whom in Scandinavia. I think that's the plan, is that they don't have a plan yet.
Always a good plan to not have a plan.
How's that working for you, Karthik?
It means I'm here instead of playing.
All right. Fall of 1902.
So yeah, in fall 1902, the Austrians, after moving in position to take back Trieste, finally do pull the trigger and take it back with force. But that does mean that they do have to give up Greece, which is taken, I think, with the help of the Italians. In the same time, Mao slides back down to Portugal, yielding now to Mao, and seemingly in a clever guess, rather than forcing it, Robert Schuba opts to put Burgundy into Picardy while putting Munich into Burgundy, which gives them this really, really nice offensive alignment against Jackson while also taking the Mid-Atlantic Ocean. In the north, the previously expected, bounce thing doesn't happen. which is probably a good move from Robert to ensure an army makes it into St. Petersburg and that no fleet can be built there in the winter. Other than that, just relatively standard play from the Germans following through with the orders that they needed to write. So, all in all, good turn for the EG, good turn for RT, rough turn for Austria, rough turn for Italy.
Yeah, the thing about the EG is I agree it's a good turn, and maybe they have enough time to figure out what they're doing. But when there's such a strong RT, they can't wait all that long. Or Russia will, or maybe there's no waiting here, and England and Russia are going to work together, or Germany and Russia are going to work together instead. We'll see. The fact that Kiel is just sitting there and not going to Baltic is very significant.
Right, absolutely.
Why do you say that?
Because if you're really going to have an EG, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can send your units against France and set up to take Sweden out. In fact, it could have already and should have already happened. So if you've got an EG that's really cooking with gas, you're already doing that. I just don't think they're cooking with gas yet. I don't really know whether they're going to stay together in Scandinavia or not.
And I think to your point, David, I personally wish that Epps had taken Sweden already, because he really needs that army build in Munich, because I think an opportunistic and kind of lost Italy would want to slide into Munich here.
Oh, no. Cody Green would never consider snagging Munich for no reason. That would not be Cody's operandi. There's an open center for him to take. No, definitely.
It seems like you know Cody Green all too well, my friend.
We've all watched him play. He's a good player. But he is not going to, particularly, he has no reason not to take it.
Right. I mean, because Austria's Trieste is hard to take back. There's, lots of guesses. Why not just walk in?
Michael did point out that Russia waived a build 1901. We failed to mention that, and that is why we see +1 in the adjustments here. Just moving quickly through our adjustments, Russia uses that build for an army in Warsaw. Jackson builds a fleet or an army in Marseille, and Turkey builds an army in Caen. So armies all around. Karthik, I'll go to you this time. What are these adjustments telling you?
These adjustments tell me that RT is going to be rolling through Austria really, really quickly. It tells me that Jackson is trying to beg England for survival and trying to basically mess with the Germans right now. And it tells me that basically the Juggernaut will probably get the upper hand over the EG unless they take immediate action on Scandinavia.
The fact that Russian build was coming is why what you pointed out, Karthik, is so important. That that the army going to St. Pete means that the Russian couldn't build in St. Pete if that was his want to do.
Right, exactly.
So France, in my opinion, is one of, if not the most defensible power in diplomacy. And in this particular case, Karthik pointed out that there appears to be hey, I'm choosing to defend against one power versus the other. And in this case, defending against Germany rather than England, perhaps a diplomatic attempt to try and flip England to change sides, or perhaps to frustrate Germany, so that they're saying, hey, you're not making any progress. Why don't we change so that you can make progress? Because England's putting all their effort into me. David, what's your thought on that kind of approach for the French player here?
Sometimes your only solution when being attacked is to unbalance the alliance that's attacking you, to make sure that only one of them gets benefits from it. In this case, I actually think Jackson's builds and position is flexible. I know it's all armies, but he can still choose. There's still guesses he can make to defend against the English instead of the Germans. So the fact that he set himself up like this, I think, is probably maximum defensive strategy and what you would expect from Jackson. And it's going to take a while for the Anglo-German alliance, the Waterloo, to attack the French here successfully.
I disagree with you there in part, because there is one move that allows him to defend against the English relatively well while also annoying the Germans, where you have Gascony support Paris to Brest, Brest taps Picardy, Marseille taps Burgundy. But the issue with that is if the Germany wants to be a decent ally to the English and just end France, it's relatively trivial for that to be countered with something like Picardy convoys Belgium to Brest. English convoys Belgium to Brest, Pickering supports it, and then suddenly Jackson is dead to rights. I don't think this unbalances it as well as one would hope it would, nor does it really give him the flexibility against English that he may want.
I don't know that he had much of a choice, though. I mean, he had to plug up France with unless you're saying he should have built a fleet and tried to put the fleet in Spain and live in Scandinavia and live in Iberia. That is a theory
Right.
of the universe, but I don't think he's ready to give up on
the mainland,
unbalancing the alliance.
Right. And I mean, if the alliance can't see those moves, then he actually may get his way, but depends on
because you can still take one of those armies into Spain and defend Scandinavia with an army and a fleet. I mean, not Scandinavia. Keeps wanting to say that. Defend Iberia with an army and a fleet instead of 2 fleets. You can still do that and try to survive out there.
Right. That is true. But I think having double fleets in Iberia gives you much more tactical flexibility in terms of guesswork than an army fleet does.
Well, and it can make you a better potential puppet for one side or the other, because then you've got the ability to project force through the seas when you can only do that with one fleet.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're having a technical issue with the map. We'll get it back up here in a minute. I'm struck by how the board has not really reacted to the fact that there's a Russo-Turkish alliance that's going to cream through.
Right. And I think, normally speaking, the RT is an overrated alliance in terms of how quickly it can roll and how powerful it is. But there was a time when it was rightfully feared, and that was a time when people were very, very slow to respond to a developing RT. And by the time they responded to it, it was too late to do anything. This is one of those times that I'm worried about, where they are a little too slow to respond to things. And while Russia hasn't got much in the north yet, which makes it a little bit more manageable, I am worried that if this goes on for too long, people will find themselves in a position where they can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, and it could be that this is too early to worry about that, because, so what if the RT is doing well? We're doing well too, says the EG. We're gonna get our centers. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. I'm just puzzled, and I know I've already said this once. I'm just puzzled why the Germans and the English didn't already take out Sweden and put pressure on St. Peter. I just don't quite get it unless that alliance is not really all that strong, which it might not be.
Right, exactly. That's exactly my viewpoint as well. If the EG is strong and they truly want to go to the end with each other, or at least go into the mid game with each other, then I think we would expect to see Sweden long gone and pressure on Sweden. The only explanation is something along the lines of, oh, well, we're finally seeing the move there. So I think it's a moot point.
Apologies. Looks like my internet dropped. I am using my cell phone hotspot, so we'll see how this lasts. But yeah, let's get to it.
So yeah,
I'm loving Burgundy to Munich, because Robert Schupa also said Cody Green's in Tyrolia. Oh my God, I can't take a chance on that. So
right,
and we were just talking about putting the hammer down on Sweden, and here it comes.
Yep. Though the one curiosity I have here is that if you are trying to make the move on Brest here, and you're trying to put the Germans and all people into Brest, why is Mid-Atlantic not tapping Gascony? Why is Burgundy not tapping Paris? I get Burgundy at least to some degree because of Tyrolia, but there's an interesting set of moves here that I don't think is really optimal for either part of the alliance.
Although, as we've already pointed out, France really is tough to crack when they've got 5 centers. So you've got to try to come up with a way to go around them.
Yep.
I mean, and I think that's probably maybe what could have happened here is go to the Western Mid, and then then you support yourself. It takes a little bit more time, but you're giving yourself more ability to go around his weakness. His weakness is the fact that he can't cover Spain and do everything else that he wants to do. That's the weakness.
Right.
I do agree with that, David. The one pause that I would have is there's just not time for the West right now, because this RT is rolling. So I normally would be right with you. Let's be patient, move into West Med, set yourself up. But in this case, that clock is ticking. The East is moving fast.
Well, I'm a little puzzled. I mean, why would Portugal not hit Mid-Atlantic in this situation? I guess he was thinking they might self-bounce in Spain or something, but Jackson's not going to do that. So the attack on Brest is not going to work, is my point. I think you should know that.
No. It could have worked. If they wanted to make it work, it would have worked. Because all it takes is Mao tapping Gascony, Burgundy topping Paris, and then it's guaranteed. The issue is that they didn't really want it or care for work necessarily, or they prioritize that's unfair for me to say. They prioritize other things over Brest working. And if you're going to prioritize other things over Brest working, I think you have to go Western and Mao. And
Yeah,
that
that was my point.
The East later as well. Like, I just think that would have been much better than what they chose to do here.
Yeah, you really can't successfully kill French if you're actually worried about Munich. And I was joking about that, but you really just got to assume the Italians might take it and don't care.
Right, exactly.
And move Holland down to Ruhr or Holland over to Kiel or something, and try to take it back if you need to or something.
Yep.
But the other thing you could do is support into Burgundy and take a little bit of a longer game.
Though the thing I like about this move here, though, is that if he's disbanding Burgundy, maybe that means Jackson's finally putting the fleet out in Marseille that I wanted. But unfortunately, this is also not the position I want him to do that either.
Yeah, it's all about you, Karthik, and making sure that he does what you want him to do. That
exactly.
Is basically,
it's true I'm commentating. It's true and I'm his ally. Like, that's what really matters, David.
But we've spent a lot of time on the attempted takedown of the French and not enough time on the actual takedown of Austria, which has been sudden and terrible.
Well, I mean, I think we commented that on a previous show where I said it's fait accompli basically at this point. Like, there's nothing the Austrians can do. It's a matter of when and not if. And the when is now, unfortunately.
And the when is now and they're gone.
Yep.
So, now the question is, does the RT stick together, or is there any tension here as we go into 1904? And there might be. Alliances are tough sometimes to maintain.
That they are.
So I think that's an interesting question. So I'm going to set this up. I'm going to drop off of my hotspot and see if my wired internet is back online. While I do that, if y'all can talk through, do you stick together as the RT? And then the other item would be, we'll do an early who do you like? Because I think this is an interesting board position. So I will hopefully see you guys shortly.
All right. Well, we hope so too, Brian, because nobody wants to hear Karthik talk. I mean, me and Karthik talk for a long time.
Right. I'm glad you fixed it at the end, Dave.
I did catch my obvious mistake.
Right.
If you're Russia, you sure as hell hope that you've got friendship still with Turkey because you've got EG coming.
Right.
So, and I know he's got 2 builds, and that's great. And maybe diplomacy is going to solve his problem somehow. Because, France is basically still a viable threat to the EG. So can they really afford to, England's actually going down one here. So maybe it's not as much of a threat. But if I'm the Russians, I sure hope that I'm still with the Turks. If I'm the Turks, I might be somewhat concerned about the fact that there's a fleet sev that we still haven't decided how to kill. I'm a big believer if you're going to have a true RT that lasts a long time, you got to kill the Russian fleet.
Right. And I think the issue for the Turks here is that this is really nice for the Russians is that Turkey is pretty much kind of forced into building fleet Smyrna here so they can try to break through the Ionian. The one issue with that, though, is that the Italians are also building so that they get to drop down a fleet in Naples here, which can lock the Ionian up. Now, maybe they can get lucky and the Italians choose to build an army, which would be a mistake here. But counting on things like that, I mean, I think the board is really, really well set up for the Russians now, better than one might think, unless Turkey chooses to stab. If Turkey chooses to stab here, I'm not sure how profitable it would be to Turkey because Russia can kind of sort of hunker down and just say, like, look, I'm committing everything to you. England and Germany can do what they may. But I'm freezing you out of it, which would not be an unreasonable thing for the Russians to choose to say here.
I think if you're Turkey, you really only do it if you're pretty sure you can work with Cody.
Right. That you absolutely.
That's an obvious point to make is that you don't want to trade an ally for not having an ally. But it's not just that you think you can work with Cody. You need to really be pretty sure you can work with Cody before you pull the trigger here.
Right.
So just to catch me up, have we done the who do you like?
We have not. We've been mostly talking about the RT relationship and what you do about it. Who do we like on the board entirely?
Who do you want to take over in this position to give you the best chance to win the game?
I want to take over the Germans because there's so much flexibility here. I mean, I think that you could work out something with France if you convince him to build a fleet here. You could work out something with France. You can work out something with the Russians. You can continue with the English. I think you just got lots of options. The Russians are in really good shape, and obviously also at 7 centers. But I don't think their options are as great unless they've already succeeded somehow in diplomacy with breaking up the EG.
Karthik, same question.
This may be a hot take, but I'm taking the French. I don't know how happy England will be to have lost Belgium there. It will have to result in either a fleet that England does not want to lose being pulled, or more likely the army in Burgundy getting pulled, which gives you a chance to reset your defensive alignment. You do have the ability to drop down a fleet in Marseille, and if the English have any doubts about the attack, you suddenly can regain your fleet position given time. People will be forgetting about how strong you were because of how dead you've been for the past 3 years. I think there'll be some Germany-England infighting. I think RT will come to blows sooner rather than later. And I think France would profit off of both of those things, plus potentially a weak Italy to come after, if RT stays together a little bit longer.
I think that these adjustments are actually pretty critical.
Mm-hmm.
If England gets rid of the army, then yeah, the EG is basically almost over.
Mm-hmm.
What England would need to do to stay in the EG is to get rid of the fleet North Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough thing to ask, but that's what he'll do if it's still an EG.
Yeah, if he disbands the fleet, then I'm all in on Germany. Germany has everything they'd ever want.
Disbands the army. I just think that means that England has become a minor player in whatever alliance structure is about to happen. Because he now really can't do anything except defend.
And yeah, now EF could lock up for a long time with Germany and see what happens, but RG maybe could form here. That'd be what I'm going for if I'm Teague.
So Germany saying, all right, I'm putting the pushing down on the throttle, come catch me, which is a valid way to play Germany. I've seen a lot of success with that style, but it is going to be interesting to see where that next dot comes from. Marseille, you got your fleet build, Karthik, and looks like to me the RT is sticking together from those adjustments at least. David, why don't you take this year?
Yeah, this is just ET going wild here now because the fleet goes to Albania. That's important. That Italy just defended there. He didn't need to defend against. There were not 3 enemy fleets. So that would be the time to take a chance, go to the Adriatic, go to Albania, and still backfill with the 2 fleets. So Cody missed an opportunity there. Now he's basically locked somewhat. I mean, he could take chances tactically, but this is bad for anybody except the Russians and the Turks. In the West, you've got England obviously pulling completely away from France here and going into, Barents Sea means that he thinks he's taking St. Pete with German help. That's not what Germany's thinking, because there ain't nobody about Bothnia. There's not even anybody still in the Baltic. So Germany has somehow pivoted here, even though they're in Prussia, and I get that. They have not set up to, for example, take out St. Pete in the fall as they could have been doing that.
And the fact that Paris didn't get a Burgundy here suggests to me that an FG has been worked out. So kudos to Teague for making the diplomacy work to get that to happen. I didn't think it was going to be possible from that position, but it worked out pretty well.
I'll bet you it's only lukewarm though.
Sure.
There's still plenty of flexibility here for everybody except the Italians, who have very little flexibility left.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for Cody.
So Karthik, you're saying, hey, England is obviously making aggressive moves to punish the person who tried to that betrayed them in their perspective, at least, and to take advantage of that, knowing that was the likely outcome. Jackson's setting up to work with Germany.
Yeah, I think if he wasn't, he would have gone into a defensive turtle position, try to occupy Burgundy, try to occupy Picardy, and then slide fleets around into Brest and Mid-Atlantic and really lock up and wait and then move from there.
Or he may just be holding back. I mean, we'll find out, but he may also just hold back here and let.
I'm calling my shot. I think he's going to North Atlantic Ocean here.
You think he should?
I think he should. If he's working with the Germans, or if he doesn't want to work with the English hardcore, he should go to North Atlantic Ocean and comp at Liverpool.
Yeah.
And there we go.
So that is the aggressive play that we spoke about from Jackson Roberts, sticking with the style of play that I feel like he plays best at. So really fun to watch what's going on in the West there. David, why don't you talk through the play-by-play?
Well, the fact that the Russians are taking Norway with English support is fun, and why? Of course, if you're Shuba, why not do that? You got to have a friend of some kind. You want to have that be the Russians. So this is obviously really good news for the RT, and sort of bad news for the Germans that's what happened, because they've had to, of course, pull out from dealing with Russia. It's interesting that there are 4 units taking Trieste here. Mm-hmm. Instead of sending one into the Adriatic, for example, sending the fleet into the Adriatic and really getting position. So they didn't really need all 4, but I just find that interesting that that's what's happening. It's also true that in an RT, Trieste is usually Turkish, not always, but usually Turkish, because by now the Russians would have pivoted in the north to either attacking the Germans or attacking the English. And so typically the recompense for that is that the Turks get Trieste, but every situation is different.
In the winter, we've got Army in Moscow. It looks like not a wave, but unable to build. All of the centers are full. And then we've got the disbanding of the fleet in Barents. Moving on to 1905, Karthik.
Yep. Here's what I was sort of kind of waiting for is this when Russia's going to stab? Because with the Russians in Trieste and with the Turks not going to Adriatic, the ability to move on the Italians is a little bit stalled out. And the Germans are in Tyrolia. Turns out they're offering support into Venice, but who knows, really what's going to be going on there. Instead, the Russians opt to go Trieste to Serbia with support, blowing up the army. The one downside is that they do lose Trieste in the process. Whether or not that was done with agreement, probably not, given the fact that the Turks are supporting them in. But if Russia is trying to fight both IT at once, well, we'll see how it works out for them. And then in the north, we see the Germans successfully convoying into London, the Irish swinging down into English, while Jackson basically forced to the Irish Sea. So as far as I can say, London can be taken back by the English, but Liverpool is guaranteed. So it's an interesting conundrum for the West.
Yeah, the Russians may felt like they didn't really have any choice here because they didn't want to go after the Germans at this point, at this stage, and they needed to do something. I find it very interesting that the Turks knew that and supported the Italians into Trieste. Don't you find that interesting?
I do find it interesting, very interesting.
So fall of 1905, before I do that, I do want to say, I'll let the game play out. I have stuff to say. I always have stuff to say after. Welcome to the Dip Chat apps. That's fantastic.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Well, if you're pretty sure you're going to lose London, put it somewhere else, like Norway.
Yeah.
That's fun. And because he also takes Vienna.
This was some very, very questionable tactics by Russia, but no harm really, besides losing Vienna, which he already got +1. Disbands Norway, so I guess he's staying even after all is said and done. The Germans do take back Norway. They lose Liverpool, no contest, as expected. The French have the English Channel. So I think my call of wanting to be the French is looking pretty damn good right now.
It's not bad, although the Russian situation is not awful. I don't know. It's a little unclear to me what's happening exactly, because why would you leave Serbia when you're also continuing your attack against the Turks? I don't quite get it.
He was very just clearly angry with the taking of Trieste, and I think he prioritized Trieste over Serbia, which I don't know if I agree with.
I'm pretty sure I don't agree.
Right.
He's
Why is
supporting.
that,
What is
Chris?
he supporting? Romania supporting something into Bulgaria. I think this might just be some misordering, right?
I mean, Budapest is supporting Serbia to Trieste, and Romania is supporting Serbia to Bulgaria.
He was
Oh,
going to go to
Trieste?
Bulgaria, and then he decided against it
Oh my.
because he could have gone. I mean, maybe it wouldn't have mattered, but he could have gone Romania to Serbia if he was going to move out of Serbia. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think there was just a miss. You know, these things are timed, and sometimes you run out of time, and it's not. We're not being critical. It's just it's a costly mistake, I think, because if you don't have anything else to do with Romania, it would have been a good idea to order to Serbia here, maybe.
Yeah.
In a fall turn. Now spring's different, but a fall turn.
Yeah, I think this could just be the stress of the game. I mean, the one of the nice things about playing the virtual format is you do get that more face-to-face like experience of that shorter clock, and I think a lot of players, particularly when they're making the adjustment, I know I did at least, from playing extended deadline where you've got 24 hours plus to review your moves. And then you move into this high stress pressure cooker of 15 minutes or 10 minutes in some cases to make all your negotiations and get all of your orders in and check all your tactics. Something's got to give sometimes, and usually for me that's when I start to misorder. So that could be what's going on here. Winter of 1905, we've got two more builds from Teague in Germany, fleet and an army. We've got another fleet from Jackson in France and an army from Nicholas in Ankara. Anybody disagree with any of those adjustments?
I find the fleet build more curious.
I do too.
Not
It might be a great move.
Right. I mean, it's clearly a sign that he wants to play nice with the Germans. The question is, how nice are the Germans going to play with him from this position? Like, I don't like the fleet heel if I'm France, for example, right? Like, that tells me that Germany intends to rule the North. And if that's the case, then I'd rather have the fleet in Brest than wherever it is right now.
David, do you agree?
I do, although the Germans can use that fleet in the Baltic Bothnia theater and use the other two fleets to, help destroy the English. I mean, it's not completely impossible for FG to continue to work together here.
Right.
Do you feel like it's a sign that maybe we're already starting to head towards a draw?
Gosh, I hope not, because there's so much more play left in this game. When you've got Russians in Trieste, there is no stalemate position. So I'm hoping that there, can be some more play here.
All right, David, spring of 06.
All right, so the Russians this time do actually go to Serbia, and they're able to successfully go there and convoy the army out. Now, that might all be the Turks saying, here's your way to get out of my hair.
I think that is what it is.
Because you're also kicking the Germans out of Vienna. You're doing lots of stuff. The Germans really do, really are sending their stuff into Baltic Bothnia. They're going to go after the Russian position. Good for them. They actually slip into Galicia. The English Channel move to Smyrna is like, hey, Cody, I'm here to help, man. That's why I'm sending this fleet down there. So we'll see if Cody correctly surmises that that's what's happening. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Did the joke order of English Channel not slow him down at all? He obviously could have convoyed to Wales and things like that. I'm a little puzzled by that. I guess if you're going to self-bounce in Burgundy for whatever reason, then maybe you've got English Channel free to do a joke order. But I don't really like joke orders that are not necessary.
Right. I think it's a dangerous loss of tempo. Because now he can't guarantee himself either Edinburgh or London here. Because the Germans, if they just double it, if the English self-bounce in North Sea, if that doesn't go. So now, really speaking, Germany has a really, really good argument to argue for support into one of them and then promising in the next turn, oh, don't worry, I'll give you whatever one I don't take is. And that's not a great position to be in.
I do want to just I'm going to defend that bounce a little bit, not strongly, but you've got an army in Belgium, army in Munich, and then you're going to convoy that away into Wales. I mean, I get the defense. He didn't know for sure that Teague was going to move into Tyrolia. I mean, clearly with that move, it was wasted tempo, but without knowing that,
all right, riddle me this, Batman. Why does Gascony not go to Burgundy here? If you're really worried about stuff, if you're a worrywart, then go Gascony to Burgundy, Paris to Picardy, and convoy that freaking army to Wales where it belongs.
Right, because it seems to me that the Gascony army's meant to set up an attack on Venice or something like that, like a year and a half from now. I'd much rather wait on that one and stall out that by another turn, because what's 1.5 years versus 2 years? Whereas if I'm if I'm the French and I don't trust the Germans at 100%, I'm like, let me secure England now and the rest later.
Also, it seems to me that there's some pretty passive. There were also some passive moves from the Germans. Doesn't really matter because they have decided not to take a shot. No, wait, they did try to support in Edinburgh. I see that now. So there was some guessing. You know why there was guessing? Because there was no army in Wales. But I digress. But Belgium is disbanded, so we know that is by arrangement, which it makes sense given the difference in center count and the fact that he's taking St. Pete. He's also taking he's keeping Vienna. It looks like because he's got support down there. Let's look at the east for a minute. What exactly is happening? Lots of nothing, really. We don't really know. It looks like IT are working together. The French do go into Piedmont, as you suggested, Karthik. So we'll see what that means. Paris to Gascony. All right, you tempo guys. I don't know. I don't know that I would ever do that. That just seems so backwards. You're running away from the front. I don't know where you're going there. I know you're trying to make everybody happy. You're making the Germans happy.
Paris to Gascony, maybe setting up a future convoy, build fleet Marseille to Lyon, Marseille to Spain, and
I guess.
I don't know.
I guess ish.
So Michael pointed something out. I think this is an interesting idea. So if Italy lied about tapping Greece here, that could be what, like, if they were working with Russia potentially. I think it's the implication.
Oh, I wonder if and maybe that there's an expectation that Trieste goes to Serbia or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Trieste support holds Vienna or something, and maybe if Russia expects a winner's green, their position is actually really, really nice here. But when they don't get it, then it's in.
Yeah, especially because I was surprised to see the turn back on Turkey, because here I felt like they disentangled pretty nicely, and then here we've got I'm back at it again. So
right.
Well, if I'm Cody Green, playing the green pieces, and I no longer have an RT facing me, then Jackson, why are you in my Tyrrhenian Sea? Why are you in my Piedmont? This is no longer a Save the Italians campaign. This is a Make the Italians French campaign.
Right. Which is why I'm surprised that Naples didn't go to Tyrrhenian Sea here. Because if I see Marseille fleet build, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Then when I see it go to Lyon, I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Well, I assume that was all some kind of arrangement. Send me help. But
really,
at some point, that's what it was. But the situations have changed here. I agree with you. You got to go Naples to Tyrrhenian here,
right?
With freaking support, honestly.
And honestly, I probably work with the Russians here. If I am the Italians, I would go to Serbia. I would tap Greece and take my builds off of the people that probably aren't going to be very useful to me anymore. I don't think I want those 3 Turkish fleets chilling there. I'll take the Russians that are occupied with the Germans.
We got Teague saying fleet and kill so wasted, doing absolutely nothing. I think that's just a good indication of how, or a good example of how the strategic elements of diplomacy can influence the tactical and the diplomatic elements of the game. And I think how you build and where you build is one of the biggest parts of that side of the game. Because I mean, we haven't seen the entire game play out, but I've felt like tactically and diplomatically, I've liked a lot of what the Germans have done in this game. And so to have that loss of tempo through the builds is really just a really good example, and good on Teague for recognizing that. All right, so winter of 06, we've got Army and Fleet from Germany and France, Army in Venice, and disband of the fleet in Albania. We'll just push on through there into spring of 07. Karthik, why don't you take this one?
Once again, really, really questionable order set coming from Cody here. I don't know why Naples isn't the one going to Tyrrhenian Sea. Because now Tunis is guaranteed to be French. There's nothing that can be done about it. And in the north, we do see which I think was a smart move by Jackson, we do see the French turn on the Germans, enlisting the English as a janissary, which gives Jackson really, really powerful position on basically everyone he could want a powerful position on. Holland, I think Belgium probably could have gone to Holland there potentially, would have been an interesting place to be. But other than that, I mean, like, this is looking great for him. Then in the south, we see the Turks moving back into the Aegean Sea, seemingly making up with the Russians as the Russians put the Black Sea fleet into Rum. We see the Italians making up with the Russians somehow also, which is bizarre. So everyone has seemed to think, oh, we should deal with the Germans, which I'm very, very curious to see how that ends up playing out.
The fact that Belgium didn't go to Holland makes me wonder if this is just a way to get the English out of position so you can kill them.
Maybe.
Because I'm not really sure why you wouldn't do it. I know maybe the theory is, yeah, but it could retreat to Belgium. So what? So what if it retreats to Belgium? I just think that if you're going to attack the Germans, you could attack the Germans.
Right.
And the fact that you're holding there doesn't really make sense to me, unless it's some kind of misdirection play. Like, taking London.
But
he's
the English into Holland.
All right. So maybe that's the theory, is that that's what he was going to do, is put the English in Holland. Okay. All right. I can go along with that.
So now he gets to take all the English home centers very, very nicely, push the English into Germans, and then if those attacks fail, well, who really cares? Like, you get all the English home centers now. This is really, really well played by Jack.
This just goes to show you that you're so right. If you're France and you don't get killed in that initial attack and you bounce back to 5, you're always going to have a pretty decent position, because that was the only chance they had, was to kill them. You can't really kill France later. You have to kill them early in the game.
Could you say that again for me, David?
Karthik, this one time, I think you said something really pithy and right. And I appreciate the fact that you've grown so much as a diplomacy commentator.
Have I grown that much? I mean, I did win your tournament 2 years ago, David. Just had to put that one in there.
The virtual version.
Virtually won.
Although it was fun to see Sullivan come in second again. He just came in first, though.
Yep.
In Denver.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. We just had to
flip for him.
We flipped spots for that one because I took second there, so not great.
All right,
not terrible.
Yep. Let's stop talking about us and let's talk about the players on this game. In this particular situation, you've got a clear janissary situation with England, and I'm impressed. So I said early in the game, Jackson tends to play very aggressively, and I like that. I feel like when he does that, he does well. This game, though, he's showing me the ability to be a little more patient and to play diplomatically, and I love this decision because he's able to utilize the secondary motivation Robert Schupa, punishing the person he feels betrayed him. And the target that he's moving against is his rival for the board top. So just really smart decisions about how to go about doing this, and really impressed with his decision making in this game. Winner of 07, we've got Fleet Marseille and Army Paris, and we've got a disband in Adriatic. We'll push on through to 1908, but before we do, we'll play Who Do You Like again. So in this game, we now have France as the new board leader. Karthik, that was your early pick. Are you sticking with it?
Absolutely. Like, I called at the bottom that France was in a great position to come back if it could happen. And once it did, I'm definitely going to stick with it and ride to the end. Like, I think France has a clear path to the board top and a good board top at that. And it's his to lose at this point.
And David, if not France, who tops this board?
If not France, the only other person who could theoretically do it would be the Russians if other players want him to top instead of France.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's possible that other players could cooperate and let him do that. The Germans in particular, but also the Turks. So or even the Italians if the French are really pushing on the Italians. So there's some diplomatic options maybe for Russia, but from a positional point of view, Jackson's really got this game basically controlled. And this is just what happens when France gets out of the gate like this, with fending off an attack and then is able to turn it back around. I mean, it's hard to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's push.
And let me re-say,
Yep.
It's not that I don't like Teague. It's not that I don't like Epps, because I think he played really well in this game. He did get some units he built some units that couldn't really help what he was trying to do. So there were some sort of piece mistakes made. I don't know diplomatically if he could have changed things around, but it was a situation where he was going in too many directions and had too many fleets for what he was trying to accomplish. If you're going to build 4 fleets, go control the Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea and all that.
All right, spring of 1908. Karthik, I'll throw this to you.
Yeah, so this actually surprised me a little bit. I would have expected Jackson to send Burgundy to Ruhr here instead of sending Burgundy to Munich. But other than that, I think this progresses roughly as expected, with Tiroli swinging down to Piedmont, lock that gate up. Marseille slides down to Lyon, trying to put some pressure onto Tyrrhenian Sea. At the same time, trying to get Naples to walk into Ionian, get the Italians against the Turks. Great idea there. The Germans walk out of Vienna, giving Russians that back. We'll see if the Russians can move into position to sort of counter the French. I don't see it happening, but you never know.
All right, the most interesting move I see actually is Tyrolia to Piedmont.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Batting down the gate.
Is that what that is?
I think so.
To me, that's just like I'm giving up on my offensive against the Germans.
Interesting.
Is the way I read that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're going to go to Munich, none of that makes any sense to me. So right. I just wonder if this is like him running out of time. He was going to do plan A, then he decided to do plan B, and he ended up doing plan A/B, which is neither one.
Right.
And sometimes that happens when you run out of time. But I just don't see how that's guaranteed to help him in any particular way. He's still got a strong position, of course.
Right.
Particularly if you snake into Venice like that.
Right.
All right. So yeah, this was Germany. I mean, England has already flipped back. So that maybe Jackson knew that, and he was getting back for defensive purposes, because you can see now what's happening. Yep. With England becoming a little bit of a puppet for the Germans, at least in the fall turn. I'm really a little bit puzzled by the Piedmont to Venice. I guess he just figured he could snake it, and he was right.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to go to if you really wanted though to put the hammer on the Italians, then support yourself to Tyrrhenian.
I'm so confused with like how much of this is arranged and how much isn't. Like I'd really love to be in these negotiations to know that.
Well, yeah, maybe this is some kind of arrangement in terms of Venice. But I'm just saying, if you're going to snake Venice, why not go ahead and take Tyrrhenian with support?
Sure.
So the one that's most confusing to me, maybe y'all can help me understand it, is Tyrolia supporting Italy into Trieste. From my perspective, I'd be worried about defending against. I'd be prioritizing against France over supporting an Italian unit in this position.
I mean, the German unit really was not useful for any defense really here. I mean, what would it have done?
The whole thing is puzzling from the outsider looking in perspective. Everybody's supporting the Italians to Serbia. I mean, it almost looks like some kind of deal being struck about the number of centers.
Right. It's like a weird draw arrangement.
Okay.
In a game where, like, this is VDL, so it's open tribute. So their center counts really do not
So
matter.
maybe this was all intended to give the French Venice so that they could then say, and now France has got a 10-center board top.
Maybe.
Right. But, like, what's going on with the Italians in Serbia and, like, whatnot?
I don't know.
Yeah, that arranging for some kind of draw in state is the only thing that would make sense to me here. So
Right.
I'll accept that as a plausible explanation.
It's not what happens, though.
Right. Yeah, the draw doesn't happen. We have the English and the French dueling over the North Sea. Germans get them into the North Sea. We have the attempted move on to Ruhr, which should have happened a long time ago, but now won't succeed because the Dutch will keep on tapping them. It's a very, very interesting conundrum. I mean, I guess now English Channel could potentially slide in, but yeah, no, there's just a weird set of tactics that don't make a ton of sense.
I might have been tempted if I was France just to take Edinburgh there instead of trying to defend the North Sea.
Well,
but at any rate,
there you go.
Well, there. Now he lets the Germans take out Holland. Gosh. Wow, the Germans. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what's going on there either, except some kind of jockeying for more centers, because that's not really going to help. It's not really going to help the French still be the top board or top the board.
The Italians just like walk out of their centers now.
That's certainly what it looks like. Yeah,
it has to be. I mean, -4 in 1 year after being all that support to get the Italian into Serbia.
Yeah,
and then
they just don't make any. Yeah, I don't know.
This is interesting. All right. Winner of 1909. This traditionally in the Virtual Diplomacy League, it's timed. So most VDL games will go somewhere between 1909 and 1911. The most common time is the end of 1910. So if the players do not draw here, it is most probable to end at the end of 1910. But if the players were going quickly, it's possible that it could go a little longer.
It still goes here.
Round and round, the Holland.
Let's put the English back in Holland, because that hasn't changed hands enough. Those poor Dutch civilians.
But why didn't it make it in? Oh, because
it did make it in.
Okay,
it did make it in.
That's fine.
And then they lose Edinburgh because that's what you do.
Yep.
So there's a lot of jockeying here, but there was never any question that Jackson was going to top this board. There wasn't any way for really at this point, unless somebody was going to throw everything just to one power, there wasn't any way to catch Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see if it ends this way, but if so, the person or the player that I think made the biggest moves diplomatically through all of that scramble was Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
You can see in 1908, just taking a look at the little graph here, they're down at 5 centers, and then to jump up 4 to 9, well done. Whether that's through scramble, just good taking advantage of chaos, or if that was arranged. Either way, good on Nicholas. And let's see. Oh, we are still going in 1911.
Good for them. Because, Jackson needs more centers.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what happens is the Russians take Norway. Yeah. This is all jockeying for position, but isn't Jackson also now going to take he's going to take Naples.
Yeah, Naples. I mean, Naples could have been guaranteed at any point he wanted in over the past year and a half, because he could have just. I mean, not guaranteed. Sorry, there was some. No, it could have been guaranteed. Yeah, because but you would have lost Tirhenian in the process potentially. Now he doesn't need to worry about that.
Well, it's important that there's a lot of jockeying here, but none of it is anti-Jackson jockeying.
Yes, correct.
So it's just jockeying for more centers, as between the people who are not going to win the game.
Mm-hmm. Holland is now guaranteed. Yep. Norway taken as well for good measure.
Naples.
Holland. Yeah, Holland I mentioned already. So yeah, there's 15, I guess. Not bad.
Jackson, it's almost like you know how to play this game, man.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right, so game ends by time, spring 1911. Jackson Roberts with a dominating 15-center board top, 150 points. Nicholas Lawton coming in second place with 9 centers and 55 points. Bryson Russia with 7 centers, and Germany's Teague Epright in fourth with 3 centers. Really entertaining game. Karthik, I'm going to go to you first. What was the story of this game as you watched it play out?
Right. As David said, this is the story of Karthik being right. No, but in seriousness, this is the story of what happens if you do not keep France under control. And there's 2 really ways to do that. There's the EG keeping a lot of pressure on them in the north, and there's having Italy do something to them in the south, right? And if you're going to be the way that EG was and back off, that's perfectly fine and valid. But then if you're Germany, you need to be able to put a lot of pressure on them to keep them in that box. And when Germany was at 9 and France was at 6, it looked like that was going to happen. But then Germany's diplomacy seemed to melt down elsewhere. Russia was putting pressure on them. Italy was putting some degree of pressure on them by just like position being annoying. And then from there, that gave France all the openings that they needed to basically just run amok. When France saw the opportunity to turn England into a Janissary, I think that's when basically the game was over. And it's a question of how big France would get, not whether they get the board top, but how big of a board top they could get. And I think that's just a sign of Italy, Germany, and England, more Italy and Germany, I guess, not realizing how quickly France could get out of hand. And I mean, that's diplomacy.
Also, the RT sort of slowed down.
Yep.
And then stabbed each other. That also spelled the end, because if they had been able to keep together and go kill Cody and then put pressure on France, then maybe one of them would have had a chance to outdo France in the board top. So
Absolutely.
The fact that they had that fight which didn't accomplish much, and then they had to get back and sort of went back and forth. The real issue, I think, is when EG was trying to kill France, and they, instead of, for example, that one move where they could have done something else in Burgundy, he goes back to Munich because he's worried about the Italians in Tyrolia.
Yep.
You just can't do that. That means you're not going to go after France to begin with. That's fine. So make a deal with the French, go attack the English. But as the Germans, you've got to keep your fleets in position to where you can move on France, or at least prevent him from moving against you. And instead, he had the 4 fleets, but they weren't in the right place.
Right.
Well, I agree with Jack the Ripper. I really enjoyed that game. Really fun one. And if you enjoyed that, you can definitely get involved. The next Virtual Diplomacy League game is going to be on September 23rd. But that's not the only way to play League Diplomacy. We've also got a couple of other leagues that we cover here on DBN. Nexus Press League, that's an extended deadline league. Next game is August 28th. They have games that play every 2 weeks. New waves start every 2 weeks. French Diplomacy League, next game should be September 4th. And the Tour of Britain, next game should be on September 8th. So lots of ways to get involved with League Diplomacy. Still my favorite way to play this game. And we're going to see for our feature league tonight, we're going to be covering the Windy City Weasels Royale game. That's going to be coming up after our next game. And that's a club, and they use a league format for the club. And it's really, really fun. So lots of ways to get involved with leagues, and that's why we loved it so much we started this show. And let's say we get to another game.
Let's do it.
All right, let me go ahead and pull that up. And all right, here we go. Okay, so VDL game 149, and Karthik, I'm going to let you call this one out. Who are our players?
Sure. In Austria, we have Craig Mayer from Laurel, Montana. England, we have Liam Stokes from British Columbia. France, we have Isaac Ukes from Great Britain. From Germany, we have Ian Rudnick coming to us from Boston. Italy, we have Cody Green playing once again, coming to us from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And in Russia, we have Andrew Koch. And in Turkey, we have Simon repeating his appearance. So 2 players from last board. Curious to see how those dynamics play out in this one, because neither of them had good results last game. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play this one.
I believe that Andrew Koch is Coke Animal, right? Who just won the last season of Nexus.
Oh, interesting.
And that's, if that's the case, which I hope is true, that's doubly exciting for me, because that would mean they are getting their mandatory virtual game in to qualify for the DBN Invitational. So all participants in the DBNI must qualify by score, by scoring well at events, but you must also play at least one virtual game. So that it would be really cool to see that Nexus tournament, one of the largest, will definitely be worth a ton of points. So yeah, really cool. All right, we're gonna have Karthik, you go ahead and lead us off in the odd years for this.
Sure. So in this opening, we generally have relatively standard openings. We have, for example, in the West, we have Brest to Mid-Atlantic, Paris to Picardy, Marseille to Spain, suggesting a relatively pro-German bent. We have the English going with the modified Churchill, telling us basically nothing. We have the Germans with their standard opening, the Russians with theirs, the Turks with the old standard opening, the new standard opening for the Turks, which is Ankara to the Black Sea, Smyrna to Ankara, giving them the flexibility to either go to Constantinople with the fleet or once again go back to the Black Sea. And then we have the bounce in Galicia and the Italians giving themselves the option to convoy to Tunis once more. Curious to point out that once again, Cody Green is playing Italy for the second time today.
Oh, that's right. That is him playing Italy again.
Yep. This time he did not bounce in Tuscany.
When are we going to see another Smyrna or Armenia? When are we going to see another Sundstrom opening with Black Sea and Armenia? I haven't seen one of those in a while yet in league play.
Mm-hmm. It'd be cool to see that again. Ooh, I like this quite a bit. So we have a very, very aggressive AIR opening here with Sevastopol going to Romania. Love seeing Fleet Rom. We have the requested opening from David, a little bit late, of Ankara to the Black Sea, Smyrna to Armenia. We have the trade-off of Trieste, which has become a little bit less common, but has started to return once more, with Ionian going to Aegean and Venice taking Trieste. We have Spain and Portugal going to Isaac, giving him complete control of Iberia. While the most interesting thing that I always look for in any game, Picardy supports Ruhr to Belgium, meaning that we are likely seeing some sort of FG. The English convoy is denied. No bounce of Sweden. So we're seeing some very, very anti-English sentiment early. And I think I want to see Russia and France in this game, because I think both of them will be running the pace of it.
Well, Germany is getting 3 builds. Now, I think the question there is when France gets 3 builds, you almost always need to waive at least one of them.
Right.
When Germany gets 3 builds, I'm almost never in favor of waiving one.
Right.
You guys agree or disagree?
I agree. If I'm Germany, I get 3 builds, Fleet Kiel, Army Munich, Army Berlin, and I'm picking a direction to send them. In this case, probably not against the French because they've been good to me, so probably then the Russians.
Yeah, when I play Germany, I rarely am in an opportunity to even have the chance to waive a build.
Well, Brian, that's because people don't want to work with you too often on both.
I don't know.
Brian Pravel, I would love to work with you. Can't wait to do that at some point in some future game.
Well, we got somebody coming up, David, so it could happen. But no, in all seriousness, I agree. I would not waive. Basically, for me, if I'm a central power, I want those dots, or I want those builds.
You need them.
You need, exactly, as David said, 100%.
Okay, so more interesting question. You've got those 3 builds. What are you building with them, David?
I agree with Carl that you almost always just build the 1 fleet. There are situations in which you can build 2 fleets. You could argue that this would be one of them because you're going to do an FG. And so you could put a fleet in Hell and put a fleet in Baltic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the theory behind building the 2 fleets. A lot of this is just diplomatic. If I'm really, really, really pretty sure that that's what's going on, I build the 2 fleets in the Army. I advertise to the East, hey, guys, I'm building 2 fleets. You don't have to worry about the fact that I'm building 3. I'm not projecting a lot of force in the middle of the board. I'm going the other direction. So, yeah, that's a reason to do the 2 fleets. It still would be the unusual play, but I think you could justify it diplomatically depending on how strong your relationship is with the French.
And we do not see the 2 fleets, the more traditional double armies. Karthik, any of these adjustments stand out to you?
Yeah, the biggest standout to me is Army Moscow. There was a potential for it to be built in St. Petersburg, but I think Moscow is the right decision here with the Turkish fleet in both the Black Sea and the army in Armenia. You probably do want to be able to play it safe, support Romania, support Sev, or have them swing down as need be. I think that's a good build. The other interesting thing I would say is Fleet Brest. I think it confirms what we expected, that the English will be under pressure. And the final thing is Fleet Smyrna. Kind of had to, but I think it shows his cards a little bit more strongly there as well. But does mean that Bulgaria is guaranteed gone if they want it.
Now, the one downside to doing the German builds is, well, you can do this. You can put yourself into Burgundy, and then Berlin becomes immediately useful. So that's the one thing you can do. So sometimes you build that 3rd unit as the Germans, and unless it's 2 fleets and you're going to go to Baltic and Helgoland, then you've got an issue. But here he is able to put all those units in play. Kiel supporting Denmark is interesting. I guess he's trying to be friendly to both England and Russia. So that's what Germany in the last game was trying to do in the anti-French alliance. We'll see if it works better this time. Do we have just an outright AIR against the Turks? It certainly looks like it.
Yep.
It certainly looks like it in the East. And then the question is going to be who gets the jump on whom, or do they really stick together long term?
I like normally I don't like Russia in the AIR, but with Russia having the 2 fleets, 1 in the black, and all of those armies, my money would be on Russia getting the upper hand out of those Turkish centers.
Can probably take Norway if he wanted to. I mean, there's lots of opportunities here for the Russians. Now, this is another attempt to take down the French. Well, it kind of is until you realize that he's convoying to. No, it's never mind. England has Liam has pivoted again, and is taking Belgium by tapping Holland, taking Belgium as the convoy. So Ian has committed and has committed in exchange for the English taking his Belgium. In the East, is there anything more than just devastation against the Turks? I think it's just devastation against the Turks is what you got in the East. Russians are not building, but besides that.
I'm surprised the Russians didn't bother to take Norway here.
Maybe he doesn't know yet whether he wants to commit pro-English or anti-English. That might be the situation.
And if Russia didn't know about the flip against Germany, then if I was expecting them to be going against France, I don't know that I necessarily would have done that.
Right.
All right. In the winter, all of these adjustments seem to make sense to me.
I don't know. Fleet Edinburgh, if you're really going. Oh, I guess that makes sense.
You put back.
No, never mind. That does make sense.
Yeah. Spring of 03. Karthik, back to you.
Yep. So we have Edinburgh go to Norwegian as expected. We have North Sea try to go to Skagerrak. So basically, we're in a position where England is trying to move on Germany and also cover their backside against any sort of subterfuge from the Germans. Great. We have the French fleet in Mid-Atlantic Ocean going down to North Africa, which is curious. Not Western Mediterranean, not like, anywhere else, but to North Africa, making it basically a very blunt attack on Tunis, but also not threatening Italy in any other way, which basically means that that Cody has no guesses to make here, just cover Tunis. Also, probably
maybe he's ceding Tunis to the French, which is why the French went to North Africa.
I mean, I'm not sure why the Italians would ever cede Tunis to the French, but sure, that is possible. The Russians move into Armenia finally, and I suspect that this is the last turn that the Turkish will be around, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
Yep. And then, as expected, starting back off in the east, going back around, we have the Russians take out Ankara. Smyrna manages to hold with this nice little triple bounce in Constantinople, meaning that it is so long to Simon, unfortunately. Thank you so much for playing, but it is your last year. We have the bounce in Tunis, which definitely not arranged for the French to take it, like, potentially suggested. But now we see yet another reversal of fortune. Germany is upset with Liam for the betrayal and says, you know what? Screw you. I'm going to support France into Belgium. How you like me now? So I think Liam's chaotic ways are going to not end too well for him here. And we also see that Ian's decision to flip, he's starting to regret it and now has to give up Belgium to regain the French's trust, I suppose.
Yeah, he obviously knew it was coming, which is why he convoyed out to Norway, give himself some other options against the Russians.
Exactly. Which is why it's so important that the Russians get a bill so they can put it down in St. Petersburg or something like that.
Yes.
All right, winner of 03, Army in St. Pete, Fleet Marseille, and Fleet in Naples. So this is when you play the AIR, this has got to be a moment of a little bit of angst for Austria. I always find this to be a fascinating point of the game. Russia tends to have a choice when they've got position like this, at least, of working with either Austria or against Italy. Karthik, if you're in this situation, is there an obvious choice for you?
There's not an obvious one per se. I probably would choose the Italians because I expect the French to keep them busy. Whereas to me, it's not really clear who keeps the Austrians busy if I choose to work with Austria against Italy. The one thing that does give me a little bit of pause is that it's very, very easy to see how the Russians work against the Italians here. It's slightly harder to see it from the other way because it does have one unit being wasted. But that's an easy problem to solve by just blowing up that unit at some point. For me, I think I'd probably choose the Italians here.
David?
You don't choose working with both and continuing the air?
I probably would. Honestly, I would think normally I'm somewhat more against it and like to resolve my side of the board more heavily. Obviously, depending on who's around me, that is the most important thing when playing diplomacy, who your partners are around you. But in this board, I do think there is a very, very good reason to stick together and try to roll on the French and the Germans.
Maybe. I mean, the Germans, if it's an EF now that's relatively strong and France is going to go to the Mediterranean, you don't want to hasten the end of the Germans. I mean, there's some strategic decisions to make here. And a lot of this might depend on which one you can just ally the best with. But clearly, the Russians are better suited to attack the Italian holdings than they are to attack the Austrian holdings because of the fact that they've got two fleets down there.
Mm-hmm.
The real question is, are you just hastening a big France? We've already seen tonight what happens when you don't contain France.
Right.
The difference being in this game, I don't anticipate the English centers turning French.
At least not very quickly.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. I don't anticipate that happening within the next few years.
Right.
Spring of '04.
Wow, the Germans were expecting the Russians to come, weren't they? Either that or they're trying to get a jump on the Russians. I guess they're just trying to get a jump on the Russians. So this might just be when the English convoyed out of Belgium, maybe they just decided to triple up themselves. It's kind of what it looks like. Well, on the western side, because now you've got all the western units going against the east. And you have the Italians expecting the Russians to attack Caen, which is why he goes to Caen instead of sending another fleet to deal with the French. So this is advantage Western triple, it looks to me like.
Yeah, if they're able to, I mean, this would be Liam accepting the junior partner for now in the hopes that they're able to get some advantage in the future. Considering where they were, I don't necessarily hate that for Liam.
He's got 2 units on St. Pete and 2 units on Norway.
Yeah.
And takes both of them.
Yeah. I mean,
so that totally worked. Now, you wonder what the Germans attacking Belgium in there. That's part of the triple. The Germans are supposed to get Belgium in any kind of Western triple. They have to. The one thing that's interesting to me is Silesia holding. Again, whenever I see a hold, my hackles get raised a little bit. It's like, wait a minute, you couldn't come up with anything better to do than hold. And maybe the answer was not that it couldn't come up with anything better, but I wonder. You just order somewhere. The Russians going into Caen in a fall turn, while the Austrians going to. So they have jettisoned Italy here in a way that I wasn't quite expecting. Were you, Brian?
No, I was expecting Italy to and Russia to ally against Austria, and that is not what we've seen, at least at this point in the game. Looks like Karthik's back. I'm going to add him in. Hey, Karthik, glad you're back.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is a fall turn, and the Italians are going down too when the French are coming.
Yeah, so it looks like the West tripled up and did so quite successfully. And it looks like we've got an AR forming. I will say, Tommy said, hey, Liam seems to have sealed his fate, and then said he was wrong. Tommy, I disagree. He did seal his fate. It just wasn't the way that you were predicting.
It wasn't a negative fate.
Yes, exactly.
But, I do think if you're facing a Western triple that already has 3 French fleets in the mid, and AR is not an instrument you can use against the Western triple. You got no fleets.
Yeah.
I mean, you got some fleets, but you don't have enough fleets.
All right, well, let's see how it plays out.
Unless the Italians said, take my stuff and I'll send my units forward, but he didn't. He got rid of his forward units.
I will say this, though. In defense of the AR, this is about as good of an inducement for England to stab in the near term as you could possibly get, because you're basically telling England, look, go after the French. There will be no, thing that you have to worry about from the south. Italy will be contained. All of this will be contained. Only good things to you will happen. So, I don't know.
He could do that. Liam could do that. And Liam is capable of stabbing. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if I'm Liam, I'm going to think about it here.
Yeah,
it's the time to do it.
That's the kind of extended deadline thinking that a lot of face-to-face players don't normally do. We as a whole tend to focus on our own theaters, primarily because the amount of time that you have for negotiations. The extended deadline, you've got a lot more time to make those cross-theater deals. Right. And I, for one, having come out of that background, I'm always thrilled whenever I see that. It's difficult to do in this format due to timelines, so we'll see whether or not that plays out.
There he goes. This channel.
Well, yeah.
Almost think you had to do this as the EG, because otherwise France is getting out of control. And we've talked about this before. Western triples are cool, except when you're France and you're way extended in the med and don't have any way to prevent this from happening. It's awfully dangerous to do.
Right. The way that the fleets were moved, I think they were the right tactics for France in a Western triple. The issue is, if the Western triple ends, you are truly caught out. There there's no way back to the mid-Atlantic. The English channel just drops into the mid-Atlantic and is game over for the French defensively. You have the German army sliding to Burgundy. There's nothing that can defend Paris here, nothing that can defend Gascony. There's really no way for the units to get back in time. So now you have to have, like, in the fall, Lyon convoying Marseille back to Spain, Piedmont walking back to Marseille, or you go whole hog and try to force a build and try to rebuild at home. But all options are bad options for the French right now. So it's really, really curious to see what they'll choose there. In the East, things are a little bit more interesting as you sort of have this Austrian attempted attack in the South. But because of the fact that the Italians are now working with the Germans and pulling them down, the Germans get into Tyrol successfully. They get into Bohemia successfully. There's a self-bound in Silesia instead of Warsaw going there like it should have. Smyrna is taken, which is nice. Aegean is taken, also very, very important and very nice for the Austrians. But all in all, not the position that you want as the AR, even though you got EG to do what you wanted them to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of the self-bounce in Silesia move. Not sure what the point of that was.
Somebody thought something was going to happen that didn't happen.
Perhaps.
Because, I mean, if you're Russia, I think you want to be in Silesia, whether you're attacking the Austrians in a stab or if you're attacking the Germans. Like, it's just a really good place to be.
It's probably right. I mean, you're still got an EG, which means you're still facing the Germans.
Right, exactly.
Now, I'm not sure what Liam is doing here. I don't know if that Holland thing's for real or not. I hope not, Liam, that you weren't trying to take stuff from everybody that's your neighbor.
That has to be arranged. I'm like 90% sure it's arranged.
I guess it is arranged, but it sure doesn't show much impetus to go into Russia here. I guess maybe that's intentional. It must be intentional.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, why would Barents go to North? Like, if this was a good sign to Germany, then Barents is going to Norway. St. Petersburg is just holding. But
look what France does as a response to this attack. I think you said something about double down earlier, Karthik.
Yep.
He triples down.
Yeah, no kidding.
Gets the Austrian,
Venice, Rome, and Naples.
Yeah,
and
Austrian supporting
and Tunis. That's +4.
Takes
so
4. So he's still building 2. Yeah, that's crazy. Or he's building 1 because he only got one place to build. But that's crazy.
If this was an open tribute, I may say just be a Janissary and keep on pushing. But
now this is the second time we've seen Cody sort of, I'm losing. I'm going to make my mark by doing something else. And that is a way that lots of people play actually when they're in small, sort of playing the small time.
Yep.
You can there's a number of things you can do when you're playing a small time position. You can try to survive. You can try to somehow come back. You can try to be a kingmaker, or you can just try to leave your mark on the game, which I think is what Cody's doing here.
Yep.
Or just try to leave the game.
That's another thing.
Played 2 rounds. Like, okay, it's time. Wow. So Isaac +2 can only build 1. We've got Liam +1 and Ian +1 and Russia +1. So some interesting point in the game. We now have 1 less player than we did the previous turn. We'll go ahead and pause here and do who do you like? Karthik, I'm going to start with you.
I'm going to choose. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to choose France this time. I like the English. I think the Germans are going to be overly extended pretty soon, and the English will have a really, really nice stab opportunity on them. I think RA will be too slow to resolve the Italian boot situation. So yeah, I choose the English.
David?
I agree that Liam has a good chance here. I will say I think several of these players have a decent chance. When you've got a game at 8, 7, 7, 6, 6, then almost by definition you've got at least 2 or 3 players in contention here. And I think we do have 2 or 3 players in contention. I think Coke Animal, given the right situation, has the ability to come out ahead here. If Craig gets out of position enough. It's hard to see Craig being in a position to do something here, but I guess anything's possible. If the Russians get out of position, then Craig's got a shot. I'm going to pick Ian. I think Germany has a shot here. If Liam makes some poor choices, then and Ian gets some good things going diplomatically with the East and with France, then maybe Ian's got a shot. But frankly, I like all of these. I like almost all these players. I think Craig's probably got the least shot. I think he's even got a smaller shot than Isaac does, just because it's hard to see exactly where he comes out ahead. But don't ever count out the Doctor of Death, Craig Mayer. I'm not going to count him out. I'm just saying he's got a little bit less chance.
Winter of 05. Most of these seem pretty reasonable to me. David, anything stand out on these adjustments?
The Army build in Edinburgh stands out because there's an argument that you're England, you still need to take control of the mid-Atlantic situation. Another fleet might help you do that. So the Army, which has to be convoyed through North Sea if it's going to do anything, which means North Sea can't go to English Channel, is a tempo play. I wonder if that means it's going to convoy into Norway and go north and make a deal with the French.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that has to be what we would expect. Well, I've been proven so many times wrong. Have to is always going to be too strong a statement, but seems the most likely.
I think Isaac's diplomatic situation is very interesting. He sells himself as the person who can keep the East from taking control. And so he tries to sell that to the English or the Germans or both.
Well, and it's not a hard sell. Like, it's true.
Right.
He's got fleets. The East does not have fleets. So that's going to be the difference for, like, if they attack him, I'd be pulling those fleets, and that's going to give the East all kinds of power.
In theory, you could rebuild the triple here. That's apparently not what's happening, but you could have done that. All right, Ian is moving all of his units, and I like that. I like Gascony and Burgundy a lot. Marseille holding is an interesting thing to happen there. But Isaac is literally saying, let me just continue to go in the Mediterranean. And that's what he's doing. Let's see, what are the Russians doing? Silesia back to Warsaw. He's trying to set up a defensive line against the Western powers. But Liam looks like he's going to convoy to St. Pete and try to put another army into Russia. So this looks like sort of a reformed triple, with the Germans still putting armies in Gascony and Burgundy instead of going completely against the Russians. So that's not really a triple move. This is an interesting set of moves. I'm having trouble reading it entirely, and I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that somebody like me can't figure out exactly what's happening. That means the game, and people are not doing stupid moves. It's just I can't figure out exactly who's who and what's what, and that's fine.
Right. I think it's also there's some fluidity to the game left that makes it not plainly obvious to just someone who's looking at the orders, which means it's the diplomacy that's really going to be dictating the strategy going forward, which is something I find really, really nice.
Now, I will say this, and this just occurred to me. Moscow to Ukraine doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you are thinking about attacking the Austrians.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how I was reading the Russian moves.
The nice thing for the Austrians, though, is that the English move will pull them back, and Russia gets to claim no harm, no foul. So,
unless England goes to Sweden, I mean, who the hell knows at this point?
Never know with Liam.
Sweden.
There you go.
Helgoland, Sweden. Support the French into Gascony so that the Germans can retreat to Spain and lose Marseille. Okay.
Wait.
I'm
No. We look at France.
puzzled.
Look.
Yeah,
Liam ended his own game right there.
I'm not sure what's
He gave German 2 builds for what?
It could be a trade.
what's happening. Yeah, that could. It almost looks like some kind of arrangement, but then Helgoland bite and all
Yeah,
that.
right. If not for Helgoland, I would agree it's a trade. But
Although, gosh, no, this has got to be Liam stabbing. But I guess what he was trying to do is prevent Gascony to Marseille with support of Burgundy. That's what he was trying to do. He's trying to bounce that.
I mean, yeah.
There we go. He's trying for a brace, right? That's what I thought.
Right.
He was trying to prevent the Germans. Of course, the Germans went the other direction. So, wow. It was a guess. It's a guess either way.
That's fair.
But the Russians do take a shot. Didn't they take a shot? They took Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to take, so they tried to take Budapest. So, yeah, this was the Russians and the English making a deal to stab their allies. Exactly what
I love it. This game, it's very different from the last one. We've got more defined, or more. The powers are a little more centralized, but the fluidity that we're seeing between the alliance structures is making for a very, very dynamic game.
Gascony being the one that France pulls is hilarious, right? Because you might as well just be a Mediterranean power now. You can't build anyway.
Yep.
Yes, in theory, he could have gone to Paris.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating to me that that's one of the units. He kept Fleet Adriatic, but got rid of Gascony Army.
Right. Germany only builds. Oh, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, but the point is, Germany was able to build a fleet to try to fight the English with. All right, what's happening now? So we've got Denmark being taken. Yeah.
Yeah, the improves, I think, his tactical superiority here with this move, where he knows if he has 3 going into Denmark and Denmark is the mover, he overpowers it. Sweden goes into Denmark, leaving that union a nice retreat to Skagerrak, but does lose control of Denmark. Brest moves to Gascony. London moves to English Channel. Mid-Atlantic Ocean should fall soon, which will give him some control over Iberia. In the east, Germany tries to make a play on Warsaw. That's just not going to work out well. And I think the long-term danger, though, here is the loss of Holland and, Iberia, the Low Countries, which are hard to take, hard to regain, and worth keeping. In the center of the board, south center of the board, we have Austria moving on the Russians in defensive manners, successfully taking back Budapest against an attempted move in there, moving into Serbia successfully, and sort of having the position they want to, with the one loss of both Greece and Venice to the French, none of which can be used for builds, but it's just very, very funny to watch.
The French kingship of the Mediterranean is awesome. They basically have the Mediterranean to themselves. They can't build, but so what?
True.
They've basically recreated their empire in the Mediterranean, and I just find that fascinating. You don't see this very much. I can't tell you the last time I've seen this.
And the funny thing is, this is actually a relatively stable position to hold. This is not hard for the French to hold long term.
Yeah, they actually could survive this game as the Mediterranean power.
A lot of
Mediterranean only power, I mean.
Right. Yeah, this is essentially New Italy. This is what you expect to be Italy in 1901, 1902.
I've played this position several times as Italy. Oh, whoa. Okay, was not expecting that. Yeah.
Way to go, Ian. Way to go, Ian.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like we draw in 1907.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody who played in this game can confirm, but I think we go back to the 1906 score. Yeah. So that would put Ian in first, with 9 centers, Andrew in second with 8 centers. All right, so Karthik, I'll start with you. First of all, is this the right point to? Is there anybody that should not have accepted this draw, in your opinion?
I think Liam should not have accepted this draw. I mean, there is little downside to him trying to prosecute this war for longer and trying to find his way into a top. And there's very, very much upside. There's so much upside for him to be having here. I'm not sure why he took the draw. Russia and Austria, I don't think either of them have a path to the board top now, with maybe Russia having one on an outside possibility. But I think it makes sense for everyone to draw here besides England, who really should have fought longer, I think.
I mean, England's sitting on Denmark. So that would have created a 888, correct?
Yeah, but Sweden probably falls there, but you then can pick up Holland. There's a lot of guesses that can happen here, but these are guesses that I like to make as England. And if I'm Liam, I just say I'm going to trust my tactics and pray for the win because no one else can really do much against you here. Like the Russians have an Austrian problem to deal with. They have a German problem to deal with. They're not coming for St. Petersburg, and like at least for the next year or two. The Germans have other things to deal with. Austria's going to get greedy pretty soon, probably. At least they have something to think about there. Units occupied attacking the Russians that are not going to get anything in the short term. Yes, they build off of Portugal, probably because they probably find a way to get back even with you. But maybe they don't. Why not? Why not take some chances and see what happens here? See if you can work with the English. See if you can work with the French. Put the French into Spain or something like that. Who knows? Like there's so many things that could happen here. I don't see any reason for Liam to draw.
David?
That's probably right. Although the real chance that Liam has is if Russia helps against the Germans, and maybe Russia said, "I'm not doing that," for whatever reason. Maybe the Russians said, I want this game to end, and I'm not going to help you against the Germans. Something. I mean, there could have been some diplomatic play here. Like I'm done with this game. Ian played really well, and never discount the possibility that people just wanted Ian to top the board because they thought he played well. Yeah. Sometimes that's the way these games go, particularly from those who are not going to top the board.
Very fair.
And Ian did play well. Let's be honest. Ian did play this game well. He had some really good guesses there towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, regardless, congratulations to Ian for that top 90 points. Probably not going to be the highest score that someone would take in VDL, but certainly one that will probably count as one of your top scores at the end of the season. So very, very solid, and more importantly for me, selfishly, a really fun game to watch. So thank you all for playing. Thanks for letting us do the commentary on it. We're going to go ahead and pause our coverage of the Virtual Diplomacy League here, and we're going to go ahead and switch over to cover the Windy City Weasels Royale game. So the Windy City Weasels play a league format very similar to the Virtual Diplomacy League, and at the end of the season, the top players go to a top board. So this is the top board, what we're going to be watching of the 2022 season. It was just played in July because of scheduling reasons, and I don't know the results, but I've been told it's a very dynamic game, so I'm really looking forward to watching it. Before we do that, though, I just want to talk a little bit about club play. So I grew up playing diplomacy. I started when I was 8 years old. My whole family played, and played through junior high and high school with a bunch of friends on and off. Then I began playing competitively online, played back in the late 90s, early 2000s on the judges, sending in email orders, and then switched over to online through things like Play Diplomacy and Facebook and all stuff like that. But I never really found a group of people that had the same kind of passion about this game until I started playing with the Windy City Weasels in Chicago. I came up here for work, ended up moving to Chicago. Honestly, part of the reason I chose Chicago is I loved the group of people that I met and interacted with. One of the best things about this game is it brings people together that would probably never otherwise interact with each other. You do get that on the tournament scene. It's a lot of fun. It's a very close-knit community. Everyone knows each other, interacts with each other, goes to each other's weddings and things like that. It's a great community. But there's something really special about playing with the same group of people within the same geographic area. So not everyone's fortunate enough to have a good solid club in their area, but for those that do, definitely encourage you to seek it out. So some big clubs right now. We were going to be covering a game from Denver, Armada Club. Unfortunately couldn't get the game. There was a technical issue. so we can get that coverage to us. But they are extremely active right now. So if you're in Denver, definitely look up Armada. We've got a new club in New York that's been doing a lot of work. I know that we've got a club that just started in Nashville. So definitely check that out. There's the Bay Area Diplomacy Association in San Francisco, San Jose area, California. Is anybody else aware of any other active groups right now?
Those are the active clubs right now, and the one in New York City is called the Diplo Rats, which is fun.
Yeah.
I also started in club play. Basically, our friends started playing together in 1984, and we recorded our games from the very first one we ever played. And that so we thought that the whole club aspect and having continuing standings and all that was important to keep us together as a club, and that was before we realized there was a diplomacy hobby. So we thought we were inventing the wheel for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. The Boston Backbiters.
Yep. Thank you, Tommy. Yep,
Thank
Boston
you. I mean, that's a
Backbiters.
good point.
And I know Washington, D.C., I don't know if they're playing actively right now, but the D.C. area has had a lot of active play over the years as well. If they're not currently playing, I suspect it wouldn't be too difficult to get a group back up in that area.
In that area, David Miller is working on doing an event sometime in the winter or early spring as a way to springboard club play to again happen in the D.C., Virginia, Maryland area.
So just we'll wrap up talking about this and may cover it again after the game. But I will say, if anybody's interested in club play, first of all, do it. It's great. My personal experience, having done organization with the Weasels, you probably need about 8 active players for you to be able to get games consistently. That's not always the easiest thing, but there is a pretty good resource out there called the Face-to-Face Registry. Bill Hackenbrack put together. A bunch of players have gone through online and indicated in a Google Doc, hey, I'm in this area and I'm interested in playing face-to-face diplomacy. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely look that up. I think there's a link in our show notes. If not, I will try to remember to add that in there. And I know there's a link on our website. You can go to diplobn.com and find a link to it. But that's a great way to get in contact. And then another good way would be to just post in one of the more active Discord servers. So if you are in the Virtual Diplomacy Discord channel, or if you are, I would guess, in the Renegade server, the diplomacy channel there, those would be good places to kind of post for, hey, I'm in this area, is anybody interested in getting together? And in my experience, people are usually willing to drive a couple hours for a game. So, all right, let's go ahead and get to our game, our feature game for tonight, Feature League. And we go ahead and bring this up. And one more button to press. I should have done this while I was jabbering.
Well, the other thing that somebody, if you're totally new to this and you didn't understand some of what was just said about Discord servers and stuff, send us an email at info@diplobn.com and we'll point you in the right direction.
Yep. Okay, so before we do this, I want to show the players. So the standings we had, they used the Paris method to select their powers. So our number 1 seed coming into the game was Tim Crosby, Ben Kellman number 2, Brandon Vogel 3, Wes Ketchum 4, Chris Kelly 5, Kevin O'Kelly 6, and Christian Brown 7. It is quite the Weaselly lot. Most of these players are pretty active in virtual play. Chris Kelly has not played very actively in virtual, however, has been very active posting in chat. So definitely most of these names should be familiar to frequent VDL League Night viewers. At the end of the day, we ended up with Ben Kelman in France, Chris Kelly in England, Tim Crosby, Italy, Brandon Fogel, Russia, Wes Ketchum, Austria, Kevin O'Kelly, Germany, and Christian Brown in Turkey. I have played many games with most of these players, and I will say the pick that is most exciting to me is Chris Kelly in England. Chris plays England extremely well. He is known within the club as being something of an England specialist. And because Chris has not been playing all of these virtual games, sometimes there is an effect where people are tired of the other people winning and they'll kind of give a nod towards the players that have not upset them in games recently. So he will be the one I'm watching. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out Brandon's in Thailand right now, competing at the World Diplomacy Championship. He does a lot of the tech for Dipcast, and for some reason I couldn't figure out how to change Chris Kelly's name. So when you
enjoying,
I think
Chris
it's pretty
Kelly.
accurate.
Yeah, I'm totally enjoying Chris Kelly. It's just the unknown quantity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think you hit the nail on the head, if I'm being quite honest. Yeah.
all right. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do this. David, I'm going to put you up first. You'll take the odd years, and Karthik, you can take the even years, and we'll get right to it. Here we go.
I'm actually having an internet issue. Give me a minute to fix it. Y'all go ahead and
No
talk
problem.
about it.
Karthik, why don't you take the odd years?
Sounds good. So I think David just didn't want to talk about Ben Kelman doing his style of opening almost, except the one difference would be Brett's going to English channel with the whole hood hog, but trying to make a play for Belgium nevertheless, and then swing the fleet around to probably pick up Portugal or Spain. In the north, we have England taking North Sea and Norwegian with a standard Churchill. We have Kiel going to Denmark, Berlin going to Kiel, but Kevin O'Kelly mixes it up and sends Munich to Tyrolia, which isn't very common in virtual play, but used to be a mainstay in online and face-to-face play back in the day. We had the bouncing Galicia, and most interestingly, the Armenian fist bump, where Sev and Smyrna both bounced in Armenia. Normally, there are some issues with the opening, but when it works, it can work very well. And then we have the move to Apulia and Ionian Sea, setting up Tim Crosby for Lepanto if he so chooses.
Yeah, the important thing here is the ability for Turkey, if they want to get their fleet into the Aegean in the fall of 1901. That's the big issue, which is, of course, good for Brandon as well.
Mm-hmm. One would think one person would learn someday about not trusting Brandon with the open Black Sea, but in this case, he's pretty nice about it, putting Sevastopol into Romania.
It's a totally pro-Turkish move to move your fleet to Romania while Turkey's moving your army to Armenia.
Right, and then the Turks support the Albanian fleet to Greece. Not that it made any difference, but it's just curious to point out. We could be seeing a rat on our hands. Warsaw doesn't go to Galicia either. Constantinople goes into Aegean. Smyrna goes to Armenia, whatever that means. We have Mao going to Portugal, Picardy going to Belgium, a bounce in Holland, which is, that is a move. And then we see Norwegian go to Norway. It seems that this board has had enough of Kevin O'Kelly, and Denmark goes to Sweden to bounce out Brandon to boot, which is really Kevin O'Kelly sealing his own. He's dead. He's done.
This is why the bouncing of Sweden is something that should only be done rarely, because you don't really know whether you need the Russians or not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now they could still repair the relationship.
Right. The relationship being repairable is not my concern. My concern is whether or not Brandon can even do anything to save Kevin O'Kelly before Kevin O'Kelly meets his untimely death.
Well, he can build in St. Pete right now.
Yeah.
He did get Romania. He doesn't do it.
Yeah.
But he could have. I don't really understand, or I didn't understand Armenia to begin with, and I'm still not entirely sure what's happening there, but it doesn't matter, I guess. but the Russians are going to go north. They are going to do something.
I thought we were going to be seeing a rat, but guess not.
Well, Vienna going to Tyrolia with support means that it's good that Tim got his army back to Apulia, is what it means. right? Because now
Right.
he can defend Venice.
Mhm.
Um,
Seems to be
and
more
see,
West Ketchum saying, "I'm going to get what I want, and you guys can do whatever you feel like doing in the East."
well, and in the West, of course, the attack on Kevin continues.
Mhm.
Kevin had to take a chance on, or make a decision on what to do. He decided to do this, which at least puts all of his armies in play for the fall 1902 move, because he's able to get Berlin into somewhere that's totally useful.
Yeah, I mean, it was looking pretty bad. I don't hate this in position for Kevin. I mean, I don't love it, but it's not all bad. At least there's options here.
Yeah, it's somewhat salvageable for sure, which is all you can ask for. Well,
Ben going to Western Mid is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Because you're going ahead, and taking your next step. You think you've got Kevin sort of defeated in the long run, and so you decided to go ahead and make your next step, which is going into the Mediterranean. It could be the right move. I mean, there are people that want to play France much more slowly. I'm usually not one of those people, but there are people that want to move them, that want to play them slowly. And so the slow move would have been to do neither one, neither go to North Atlantic nor to go to Western Mid.
Mm-hmm.
He's decided to go ahead and prioritize, his next target, which apparently is Tim Crosby.
Well, it's interesting too that we've got Ionian had a choice of where to retreat and chose to retreat to Albania despite knowing that Ben Kelman's in West Med too. That's fascinating to me.
Well, perhaps West is coming. I mean, perhaps Ben's coming to help.
Yeah.
Maybe, but on the nice side, it's basically telling Christian, like, you have to go for Tunis. Like, you have to stop bothering me for a turn. Otherwise, you're just giving Tunis to Ben. And do you want to give Tunis to France, this early in the game? It's hard to get them out once you, let them stay there for too long. So it's very, very interesting, the game that Tim Crosby is playing here. And I don't love it, but I don't hate it either.
We are covering the Windy City Weasel Royale played in 2023. This is the championship game for the 2022 season, featuring club play, encouraging everybody to try and get involved if they have that opportunity. Right now, winner of 1902, we have Chris Kelly, who's the unknown player, building 1, and we've got Ben Kelman in France building 1. We've also got Brandon building 1 as well in Russia. The interesting ones to me are the French and English moves. Karthik, what's your predictions for what we'll see here?
I think we're going to see more French and English cooperation in the short term. My worry is that Ben is going to move too far out of position and get burned for it. But so long as the alternative that he doesn't want to take the final risk to really give himself a winning position, and then just ends up holding and staying in stasis. There is a really, really fine line to walk when you do these kinds of things. And if you fail to, walk that fine line, you either stall out or get stabbed hard. So that's what I'm most curious to see here.
I'm curious to see when Sevastopol goes to Armenia. Not whether it's going to go to Armenia.
Yeah.
When it's going to go to Armenia. That's the interesting thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we've got South Coast St. Pete build fleet, and that is always a statement. It can only be only is never appropriate in diplomacy. Can almost always be interpreted as anti-German. Let's find out if that is in fact the case.
That is in fact the case.
Yep. Sweden going to Skagerrak.
Not impossible for Russia to pivot and attack Sweden, Norway in the fall, but not very likely.
Right. So now I think we're starting to see sort of these battle lines forming pretty hard. We see the anti-German coalition coming into picture. We have Sweden going to Skagerrak, St. Petersburg going to Bothnia, Finland going to Sweden. At the same time, we see the French move into Ruhr, and we have the English try to tap Denmark, doesn't do anything, and unfortunately in the process they do lose Holland, and it's something that can be taken back, but it's going to be taken back in a less interesting, less fun way for the EF duo. In the south, though, we see France taking Tunis unopposed, seemingly expecting West to go to Tyrrhenian to support them. We see the AT move hard, taking both Venice by tapping fully to make it guaranteed. We see them taking Romania by force, Ankara sliding to Armenia instead of Sevastopol sliding there. So it's a very, very interesting setup. There'll be some guesses for the Russian to make and for the Turk to make in terms of what to cover. If I had to guess, I think Brand is just going to support Serbia or Greece into Bulgaria and make a whole mess of it, because that sounds like a Brandon thing to do. But very, very fun turn.
Brandon is messy, but yeah, this is a fun turn. I don't think Brandon was expecting this move by the AT.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, you can tell that from Ukraine to Moscow. I mean, he thought he was going to be peaceful with both of his neighbors.
Right.
Now, in theory, perhaps he thought that Romania was going to get hit and then you rebuild it as an army kind of thing, but not when you're also going to Armenia like this from the start.
Right.
So this is clearly an AT attack, which is honestly fun. I mean, it's not fun for Brandon, but it's fun for us to watch.
It may be fun for Brandon if he wins the battle. Not out of the realm of possibility.
Okay. France takes Holland back. So that means Holland will have been passed through by all three powers, which is exciting.
It's the new Belgium.
Yeah, it is. Apparently it is. The Turks moving away from Armenia means that, I guess he was just covering it. He was worried that the Russians were just going to try to take something.
Mm-hmm. And then also the French walk out of Tunis into Ionian while walking into Tyrrhenian Sea.
So he is there to help. He is there to help.
Yeah. For now.
He doesn't need the bill because he's getting Holland.
Yep, there you go.
Got to like that French position then.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
All right, winter of 1903. We've got Ben Kelman building an army in Marseille. We've got Kevin O'Kelly building an army in Berlin. Wes Ketchum, an army in Budapest. Christian Brown, an army in Smyrna. Brandon Fogel disbanding fleet in Sweden. Fleets decrease, armies increase. Looks like we could see some activity pushing towards the center of the board based off of those builds. Let's find out if that happens.
You know, I was wondering if there was some way for Brandon and Christian to make up, and they have done that here. Convoying, because when the Turkish army got built, I thought, oh, wow. So that means he really is going to go into Armenia again with support or whatever. But no, they make a deal by convoying the Turkish army into Bulgaria. Now, once that falls apart like that and there's no longer an AT, do Ben Kelman's fleets continue to help or not is going to be the question.
Right.
Ben's in good shape, though. He obviously taken Ruhr now. You know, the German move to Helgoland is a bit of a Hail Mary pass. That's not really going to help you in the long run, I don't think, but nothing's going to help him in the long run because Brandon couldn't afford to help anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no backup for Kevin. So assuming the EF stay together, you know, and Chris is a smart player, goes to Clyde just under the theory that, you know, if you did go to North Atlantic, you ain't go get nothing.
Yep.
So you got to like that. Neither of them is really open to the other one at this point. So it looks like, you know, advantage EF here. EF continues by taking Sweden. The friendship Mid-Atlantic going to Western Med now proves that this is truly a well-functioning EF, Marseille to Piedmont. Mm-hmm. Now, is France getting out of position like we saw in the game earlier tonight? No, because they have a build coming. Right. They have a build coming for Tunis. Christian Brown decided that was a one-turn deal with Brandon, and now he's going to kick stuff out and go throw back in with Wes. So he has really committed now to move back, put the fleet and con from Aegean. So basically, Ben Kelman has this game unless somebody at some point decides that it's not going to be Ben Kelman. They're certainly not deciding that right now because Christian moving back just basically gives Ben whatever freedom he needs in the Mediterranean.
Right.
So David, your pick to top this board from this position is Ben Kelman, correct?
Well, it's a kind of an obvious choice because he's at 8 and the next guy's at 6 and he's France and who's attacking him? And the answer is nobody. I mean, it's almost an obvious shooting a fish in a barrel kind of pick. So I'm not saying other people can't. Obviously, people could come back from this. Chris Kelly's definitely still got a shot. Lots of people have a shot, but it's hard to say that Ben doesn't have the best shot given this position.
Karthik, if not Ben, then who?
So I really like, personally, Wes Ketchum. I think Wes Ketchum and Brandon are the two best players on this board. Brandon's having a lot of annoyances and troubles and frustrations with Christian. And I think that could lead Brandon to say, like, look, I don't have much of a chance left in this game, but Christian, I'm going to choose to show you why what you did was silly. And I mean, I think Christian plays fine, but from Brandon's perspective, he's obviously going to be very annoyed. So Brandon's going to say, Wes, why don't you take Romania? Why don't you take Bulgaria? And if he can make that happen diplomatically, then I think there is a game to be had. And I think Wes can make some really, really interesting things happen.
I think that'd be fun if somebody actually ends up being able to challenge France to control the Mediterranean in that scenario. And I'm not sure that happens. I mean, we'll see.
Well, it's not unusual to see 3 fleets for Turkey. It is unusual to have 3 fleets surrounding the Black Sea like this. That is a lot of fun with those builds. We've got Fleet Brest and Army Eddie. Brandon disbanding even more in the north. And Tim Crosby keeps the fleets and disbands the army. Spring of 2005.
Yeah, part of me wonders if that's a little bit overkill in terms of the number of fleets that Christian has committed to the anti-Brandon campaign. And I think that proves to be the case. I mean, as he pulls Constantinople to Black Sea, I just have a huge issue with that move. It's basically ceding all of the Mediterranean to France, saying, France is your problem. I'm not going to help with it at all. And then trying to go whole hog on Brandon. And while that's fine, I'm sure it's going to create a lot of animosity there that from Brandon to Christian, that Christian does not want to deal with in the mid and end game when Brandon is, as a small power, choosing who he wants to win this game.
All right, I'm going to quibble with Ben's tactics here a little bit.
Yep.
And you know that I'm going to say, Fleet Western holds? What the? You're not supposed to hold your unit. You're supposed to move them. I'm not really sure why you don't just support yourself to Turanian here. I'm just puzzled. Now I understand maybe you're giving yourself a place to retreat to from Ionia, but Apulia is perfectly fine this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And it would put 2 units on Naples. I don't know. Unless he was trying to intentionally slow play. I think Ben's missed a beat here.
Right.
That's what I'm going to say. Now, he doesn't miss a beat in Germany because he takes Holland back, because apparently that's a thing you do in this game, is go to Holland and then and then lose Holland.
Right.
But all in all, Kevin did pretty well just to avoid not losing anything here. I think if I were Chris, I would have been very tempted just to support myself to Helgoland here and get that fleet out of the game. I know it's a fall turn. You're supposed to emphasize going after centers, but I didn't think there was much chance that they weren't going to cover Kiel like this.
Right.
So wait a minute. Oh, I see. Helgoland hit
because it's tapped. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's why I'm saying there was no way to prevent Helgoland from being lost to the north of sea. And then you get that Edinburgh fleet into position. Then you're ready to convoy the Yorkshire army. So all of that to me would have been better than taking the shot that he took on Kiel. It just instead supports yourself to Helgoland here. But besides that quibble, EF's going well here. And,
right.
It may be who cares what I think, because Ben still takes Ionian. He just didn't didn't have a shot at taking a center.
Right.
Winner of 1905. Got Chris
another English army.
Yeah. What do you think about that, David?
That is very pro-French.
Yep.
Very much, I'm going to stay with you because you've already got an army. You haven't had a chance to convoy out yet. Now you're adding another army to it, which is, by the way, another reason why I hate the fact that he didn't take Helgoland that turn because it really slows you down in doing your convoying out. And it also makes it impossible for France to really move on you. You know, there's units sitting in England. There's nothing France wouldn't want to move on him because he's got, you know, all whatever he wants to happen in the Mediterranean apparently is going to happen. Oh, Brandon, why didn't you play this game better? Is my question to you, Brandon Fogel. I mean, you could have played well. You have played well in the past, but what is your problem here? Let's see what else is happening. Well, let's see. Christian is losing Romania and Bulgaria, so I guess that this is the move where West decides that he needs to do something to get control of this game. Venice to Piedmont with support. I don't even think I understand exactly what's going on there. Do y'all?
I think that's supposed to be a little bit of sabotage where he may have expected Tyrolean Venice's southbounds there, and then this would like cancel that out. Because I can't think of any other reason for Austria to ask for that support. I mean, there's nothing that could stop. Like, none of it makes sense from any other perspective. So I have to assume that's what it is.
So Ben is saying to Italy, "I'm not here to fight you, man.
Yep.
I'm just going to hold my position. The only thing I'm doing is taking Germany down. That's all I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm just here to maintain the balance of power."
Yep.
It's an interesting way to play it and a fun way to play it. If you're Ben.
Agreed.
So y'all are saying this is an anti-Austrian move.
Support. Yeah, the French support there is absolutely hostile.
Yeah. Interesting.
And Ben can still take Naples if he wants.
Mm-hmm.
On the north, it looks like we do see Chris Kelly getting into Helgoland.
Yes.
Yes.
Turn late, but still good. There's that convoy from London into Kiel. Munich also falls. This is EF awesomeness. And, you know, again, Ben has committed and said, you know, I've got this guy sitting in mid-Atlantic, but you've got plenty of armies still in England. There's no reason for me to worry about this. You're not going to move your fleet to English Channel here. I'm going to get a build anyway. I'm going to Western Med.
I think the most interesting thing, though, is the convoy to Bulgaria with support from Constantinople and the supported attack with support from Brandon for Sevastopol to Romania, basically ensuring that everything there stays even. But as a downside, Aegean takes Greece with the fleet being piffed, Venice being taken by. So this is a catastrophic turn for West. And now I think Brandon is Ben's only real challenger, which is a great turn for Ben. And really, really rough for West.
I think that Chris Kelly still has a shot here. I wouldn't count him out.
Chris could have a shot. Yes. With the army now in Kiel, yes, you are correct.
Because he can now pivot and convoy to Livonia or St. Pete or all sorts of things. I mean, there's some. What I do know is that the West has really won this game. Somebody in the West is in great position in this game.
I thought the fleet was the one that made it into Kiel. With the army being the one in Kiel, he actually has a very, very fun chance to take it.
I mean, he can go. Can't he go to St. Pete if he wants unopposed in 1907 with a? No,
yes,
not
he was to realign the fleets.
No, it doesn't reach that far.
Yes.
Yeah, he can go to Livonia though. Yeah.
I've got to give a shout out to Brandon here, as much as that pains me. This is I thought he was done. Like, I really thought he was done. Here, spring 1906, Austria is looking solid, and here we've got the convincing Christian Brown to move out of Sev and coming up with the right tactics to basically, not only does West get none of what he took in the spring, he's also losing Greece, also losing Venice. I now wonder, with the support from Ben into Greece, of Aegean into Greece, if maybe some of that had been coordinated also. This is just a masterful diplomatic
It really is, but it's also a mistake sometimes maybe when you want to stab. Well, I can do a spring, then I can follow it up with a fall. Sometimes stabbing like that, maybe you should have waited to a fall turn to stab. kill those units, and then this would have been harder to come back from for Turkey.
Definitely.
I don't remember if that was possible, but I'll bet you it was possible. I mean, just do some other moves and then make the move in the fall.
That's the strategic diplomatic advice that our viewers tune in for, David. Thank you for sharing that. That's good stuff. All right, winner of 06. We've got army builds all around, it looks like. Karthik, anything jump out to you with these adjustments?
Let's see.
Gosh, if E&F could play more patty cake, I don't think I've ever seen better patty cake played here.
Right. I was going to say that. And then also the pull of Berlin and opting focus on Tyrolia is both a smart call, but also a very, very interesting one. Okay, so now we're in spring 1907, and we see the English stab that we were waiting for finally happen. We see Helgoland support to Kiel to Holland. Denmark moved to Kiel, and unfortunately, somehow against all odds, Chris Kelly, Mr. Unknown himself, fails to write the convoy of Yorkshire to Belgium properly, which turns a great stab that would have been game-winning into oh, baby, you better write the right tactics for the next 2 years. At the same time, France, on the other hand, moves to Picardy just in case, ready to defend against it, moves to the Eastern Med, moves to Ionian, gets a very, very powerful, aggressive position in the Mediterranean. But yeah, this would have been a much, much better stab had the convoy actually succeeded.
And even if it had succeeded, I don't know. I don't know if you do that when you don't need Russia to hold anybody back. Russia's not holding anybody back here. Turkey's not going to be in a great position in this game, given how strong France is in the Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. If I were Chris, I would have not done any of this. I would have just said, no, I'm actually going after Brandon's undefended centers. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe he thinks he can do this and go after Brandon's undefended centers, but I don't think so. Because now he's in a war. Even if he had convoyed correctly. But we'll see. I mean, it's a spring term, so we'll see what happens.
Can't believe I'm saying this, but in defense of Chris Kelly, I think there is an argument that if you don't make this move now, you're never going to have the opportunity again. So it's a choice of, am I going attacking the person who's clearly the board leader? I think all three of us picked as the board leader, or am I going to try and race them? And with the French position being as strong as it is in the Mediterranean and the amount of chaos in the East, I don't know if Chris Kelly's able to get much more than St. Pete and Berlin and maybe Moscow if he's lucky. I don't know that he can catch him.
Well, I mean, he's in for a penny, in for a pound now, so he's got to see if he can race, if he can, make this work. Mm-hmm. And the real question for Ben is, can he make friends with anybody here, in a way that's going to help him? There's not really anybody that can help him.
This was a fantastic turn for Chris Kelly, not because of anything he did, but because of what happened in the South. If Brandon had gotten a build here that was easily usable against Chris Kelly, I think Chris Kelly would have been sunk. But because of the fact that Romania got blown up, technically, while he gets to rebuild that, he has to rebuild it in Sev, honestly, given the position that Christian Brown is going for here. So I think this is really, really good for both Christian Brown and for Chris Kelly, as that gives them the position that they need to work this position in their favor.
I'll make another pitch for attacking Brandon, as if anybody needs a pitch to make a decision to go after Brandon Fogel. But if you're Chris Kelly, you go after Brandon, which helps the Turks, which hurts the French. That's another way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, now, I mean, it's better to hurt the French by just attacking the French, but
Well, yes, but he can't just obviously win all these fights. I mean, the French still have units.
Sure. But I think how the convoy worked, it's a little bit cleaner. France has to pull 2. You have 2 armies on the continent. And some
Well,
of
yes,
it,
you do have to order your units correctly.
right, correct.
But the problem is, you got these fleets, and he does have a lot of armies, but they're still in England.
Right.
So what does Kiel and Berlin do for you? I mean,
Nothing. I mean, that's the whole point that I was trying to make, though, is that like those fleets should have been rotating out while the army landed in the Belgium or wherever it was supposed to be, and then less of an issue than just holding space and preventing Munich from doing anything untowards.
well, we'll see. Because I'm seeing the French, get in some defensive position. What's Brandon doing? He's going after Turks again?
Yep. What is Christian doing here is my question.
Well, he thinks he's going west.
Right. And it's unclear exactly to me why. Yeah, I mean, I guess he makes the attack on Budapest. I would have gone steamrolling into Sevastopol here, sending Ankou, Armenia, or just support Old Romania and send a car to Armenia. Both of them would have been great.
Again, you shouldn't need a pitch to go after Brandon, but if you wanted to make a pitch here for the Turks, that's clearly your easiest target.
Yep. Just work with the Austrians there. I mean, send them after Italy, send them after Russia, send them wherever. I mean, and I feel like there's a very, very easy direction to send them.
There's some diplomatic history here that we're not familiar with. Who is more antagonized by whom?
Right.
In all of this this eastern chaos. I mean, we're going to find out soon enough.
God knows none of the Weasels are friends on the board, despite being great friends off the board. So
Tim is suddenly back from basically the dead, right? And now he's sort of a viable power with 3 centers here.
Indeed. You love to see it. Well, Chris Kelly finally decides, hey, wouldn't it be great if I made the convoy to Belgium work? And this time he actually does. But it's at the downside of losing the army in Ruhr, which, as we said, we really want those 2 armies on the continent, not multiple stuck in home. Also not sure why Wales goes to cover Liverpool. There's nothing good that comes from that. You're occupying a build spot. It's fall. Chris Kelly cannot be making those kinds of mistakes.
Yeah, I really don't understand that one at all.
Wouldn't it be great if he dropped down Fleet Liverpool and Army London right now? But
and now he has to build in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Now it's almost as if he's pulling out of the attack or something. But this is my point. I'm not saying that Chris can't win this fight, because maybe he can. But this is not an easy fight.
I mean, he's up on 10 against Ben 7. So
yeah, but he's got a fleets that are basically can't move inland. I mean, he's got some of those units are not all that helpful. I'm not saying he can't win it, but it's not a fast win.
Oh, absolutely not.
He's got to hope somebody takes, comes and hits France from behind or something, and that's unlikely, because who's going to want to weaken France here?
Right. When did these games end, Ben? Sorry, Brian?
I believe that this game is untimed.
Oh. Then that changes a lot of things here, and I may actually agree with David a little bit more.
Say that again, but a little louder, please.
As unfortunate as it may be, I may agree with David Hood here.
This is a good study in we've talked a little bit about strategy, the strategy pillar of this game, and I think this is another good example of that, about the positioning and the unit mix of the English position. This is a pretty common problem that a lot of English powers get into, where they've got the fleets, they can get the stuff on the coast, and then how do you get inland? And I think the duration of the game is a big factor to keep in mind. I think newer players probably don't always consider that. I know I did not for many years. But in an untimed game in particular, getting those armies onto the continent is going to be really important to keep that English momentum from petering out. And I think that's the big risk that we have here. The one advantage, in my opinion, that Chris Kelly has over the traditional position like this is how weak the Russian position is. So he should, if he's able to have good diplomatic relations, be able to arrange things to move those fleets. But as you both have pointed out, that's going to be really slow. All right, moving on. Spring 1909.
Let's see. Am I right that nothing works in the West?
That is
Last Weasel
correct, I believe. Yeah.
Did he really build an army in Edinburgh and have it hold in Edinburgh? He's
Yep.
having an army hold in Liverpool. So you're
Yep.
not even giving yourself convoy options from Yorkshire or Wales. I really don't understand what's happening on that.
Neither do I.
All right, so Austria is taking Serbia. I bet Wes is happy about that.
Mhm.
The Italians are actually becoming a viable power here. I mean, they're doing something constructive. They're killing the Albanian fleet, which helps them in many ways.
Mhm.
They're going to hope to get Greece here in the fall. So Tim's really trying to come back from the dead here.
I mean, we barely talked about Tim Crosby this game, but Tim came in, I believe, second in the Virtual Diplomacy League last year.
Mhm.
He won the Tour of Britain.
Won the Tour of Britain, was one of the top players in the DBNI going into the regular season.
And he was number 1 seed in the Weasel WCW, I believe, right?
Yeah, so he's solid player. So, and as we pointed out, Italy can be a pretty defensive power to play. So one of the advantages, you can kind of react to the rest of the board. I don't like reacting in 1909 personally, but yeah, good to see Tim continuing to make some moves here.
I mean,
Hey, Chris,
good times.
If Chris had built a fleet Liverpool, it could be in North Atlantic right now.
Right, but there's a reason why I can't be in Liverpool, and I wonder what that reason is, David.
Oh, you lost, and now he's lost the English Channel.
That's
what I said. This was not an easy fight. I mean, he's made a couple of boo-boos, but even if he hadn't made the boo-boos, it would have been a little bit of a slow slog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now Belgium is gone. It's unfortunate.
Did Italy just take Trieste? Italy just took Trieste.
Yeah, Trieste, and is that to port Serbia into Greece? Yes, it is.
He's that's what he's getting out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And the Russians are taking. So maybe this is now a very late AIR.
Fascinating.
Yep. Well, it's an AIR in which Brandon Fogel is being given Serbia while also having army in Galicia and Romania. That is I don't like the Russian position here.
Have you ever considered the possibility that Brandon Fogel could win this top board?
But I refuse to accept that possibility. Mm-hmm. It looks to me like that Wes has been screwed here, though. He was leaving Vienna because he thought he was going to build, and he was not expecting Venice to Trieste. I don't think that was arranged.
No, I don't think this is something he would have arranged.
So yeah, that's not good.
No. Well, net result, we've got the Winter Green building a army each, and Christian builds. Was that a rebuild?
It's a rebuild from the guy who lost in Greece.
Yeah, Constantinople. Spring of 1910. David.
Tim Crosby back from the dead and playing hard. Gee, Chris Kelly. Brandon's no longer your friend, right? You didn't make any. Oh my gosh, this is not good. Bohemia takes Munich. Wow, have things turned here because that attack on Ben did not work. Really frankly just didn't work. Mm-hmm. So now maybe Ben will let Chris go and fight the Russians. I don't know. I mean, he's got to deal with the Munich thing, guys. So maybe this might shove EF back together. We'll see.
Well, what it does is it shows the explosive power of Russia. It can collapse very quickly, but given the opportunity, it can also be extremely resilient. One of my first times I learned that lesson, I played with Nicolas Sahuguet down to 2 centers, came back to top the board as Russia in like 4 years. He did it so fast, and that's what we're seeing here. If you asked me to pick a power to win right now, it would be Russia based off of this position and the mess going on in the West.
Gosh, if Brandon Campbell comes back to win this game, that would be amazing. All right, Tim's getting his part here. He's taking Greece. Yeah, I didn't really. Yeah, West got outmaneuvered, and then that spring move to Munich was not going to work. Um, Wait, oh, he didn't. He was supposed to go to Berlin, but he didn't order it. Maybe that's what happened. The Russians are going to put him in Berlin. He supported Berlin instead of moving to Berlin. Oh my gosh, Wes. That was his attempt to yeah, that's not good. But otherwise, yeah, this is all advantage Brandon at this point, isn't it? Now, Tim thinks it's advantage him because he thinks he can, somehow he doesn't have any enemies. He thinks he can come out well here somehow.
And he could. I mean, Brandon's going to be putting most of his attention on the west or the opposite direction. Italy has a choice of moving into a weak France or trying to pick off these Turkish centers.
I would prioritize going ahead and taking care of Turkey. I mean, as long as England and France are beating each other up like this, you want to let them keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Karthik, what are you predicting for each of these adjustments?
I'm predicting a pull of now for the English, a build of Army Paris probably, or Army Marseille for the front fleet, Naples, or Army Venice for the Italians, Army Vienna obviously for the Austrians, Army Moscow for the for Russia.
It's got to be Army Venice for the Italians, right? Got to be Army Venice. You got to lock down your gains against Austria. You don't really need it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I forgot about the rebuild, and I said Army potentially Naples. Yeah, it has to be Army Venice.
And you also don't want to make things too easy for the Russian.
Right.
All right.
Wow.
And moving on, spring 1911.
I found Fleet Marseille was an interesting build, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because that means that you lost English Channel.
Yeah. I'm surprised because if he wanted to, he could have just built Fleet Brest and supported English Channel to hold in perpetuity.
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's certainly better than building Marseille and then going to Spain. What does that do for you?
Oh, no, I take that back. No, there's three on the English Channel. Okay, no, that's fine because of the retreat. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I take back everything negative I said about it. I think that's the right order set. Then what we have here, though, is we have the failed attack on Holland, doesn't go anywhere. Have the failed support hold on Berlin. I guess people are getting tired as they're writing these orders by hand. Wait, is this on Backstabber or in person?
I think this was played on Backstabber.
Yeah, because Tim Crosby lives in Florida, so this was not in person.
Right. Oh, yeah, and Wes probably in Switzerland still, maybe.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, I don't see why Chris botches this order as well with the Berlin to Kiel thing. That cannot happen there. No reason to give up Berlin like that, and now there's no way to take it back easily either. Russia gets supported into Budapest, which is another thing good for Brandon. Loses the Black Sea, unfortunately. Going to lose Sevastopol for sure. But other than that, not too bad. And now Brandon has a good argument to ask for Tim to walk out of Serbia and to potentially give him Vienna or something like that too. So great.
Tim, don't do it. Tim, don't do it.
Oh, no, of course not. Never give Brandon anything, of course. But
you did it anyway. You walked out of Serbia.
Yeah. But he gets Smyrna and he gets Vienna.
Besides that.
But yeah, no, this is fine for Brandon. Not great, but he can build in Moscow still. He can find some way to take this back from Christian. So not bad there. And then just nothing happening in the West at all.
It hasn't happened in a while, really.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing of consequence has happened in the West in a while. It's been basically a Sitz Creek.
Mm-hmm. Sitz Creek, nice. When Baltic has to go because of it, that's really, really bad for
yeah, that kills any chance of forward momentum there, and that's gonna potentially hurt some of the defense on
So remember 3 years ago when I said, do we have to consider the possibility of Brandon Vogel championship, David?
Stop. Stop it.
Oh, and I mean, Bob calls this one out. Like I that's not completely impossible.
Not impossible. I would be very
I
happy. with
agree.
that
I mean,
result.
I think he's got as good a shot as anybody now.
I think so. I think I'd go Brandon, Tim, then Ben, honestly.
This is so much fun. All right, spring of 1912. David, I think it's your turn.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I was wondering if they were going to convoy to Cannes, and that's exactly what they did with the Italians.
Oh,
But otherwise, he's got, let's see, what else is happening here? The Russians take Sevastopol back. Christian, why did you not defend Sev? I guess he thought maybe Khan wasn't going to get hit, but that was a forlorn hope. I mean, that Khan was not going to get hit with 3, but that's a forlorn hope. Yeah, Christian's going down the drain here.
man.
Venice to Trieste with support.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I don't
Y'all
think
find that
Brandon's
interesting?
happy about
I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Also, Naples to Tirani, and he's trying to, hey, I'm an independent power. This is my sea. I can go there, France. You can't argue with me here.
Right.
You still got to deal with your English guy, which he does. Still sits Greek in the West.
And the nice thing, though, is, like, if that was a shame. If Chris really wanted to cause some chaos for Ben and create some pain, he could have just supported English Channel to Mid-Atlantic. No, there's the Union Brest. I'm right, ignore me.
Well, the Russians taking Munich. Wow.
With support from the Italians.
Got this wintergreen coming.
Yep. Vienna goes to Bohemia. Presumably future trade of some sorts in the line. I don't know.
This is rolling.
Yeah, this is fun.
Brandon Vogel on 10.
Yep, got Brandon on 10. We got Tim Crosby from 2 in 1906 to 8. This is delicious. All right, more armies. We've got a fleet. Classic wintergreen builds. Any disagreements on those adjustments from anyone?
I don't think so.
Arthik, 1919.
So we have the Russians take Trieste by force after tapping Tyrolia. Fantastic. Does cause them to lose Munich in the process, but Munich was a gunner no matter what. We do see some limited EF cooperation for the time being. Very, very much trust but verify going on. We see Tunis once again attempting to be taken by the Italians. Not going to happen. I expect a 2-on-2 bounce going there forward. We see Smyrna going to Khan, bounced up by the Turks. Bulgaria taken by force while Bulgaria slinks into Greece. It is a very, very fun time. It's going to be a tactical battle. And in tactical battles, I'm going to choose Brandon to win this game 100% of the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the problem with Russia at 10, you guys have heard me say this before. The problem with Russia at 10 is like anybody else having 7.
Right.
It's precarious.
Swaps, yeah.
It's precarious, and it's precarious here, because if England and France ever gets their act together, Brandon can't hold against them. So this is Brandon going for the jugular and hoping that he can convince people to let him take the board top. Hoping that he can stay with England friendly or something like that.
All right, fall 1913. I'm going to put both of you on the spot. David, is Brandon able to hold it?
No, I predict no.
Karthik.
Only because I think people are probably too tired of Brandon winning. I'd say no, but we'll see.
But he will, just to prove me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah, like I said, the tactics, he does have a slight advantage there.
Well, he also has Christian helping him into Smyrna. That's not insignificant.
Doesn't hurt, yeah.
But Chris is going to come. I mean, he's already moved to Finland. I mean, it makes no sense for Chris just to sit there and not have any shot. And what he's got to do is make peace with France. That's what he got. That's been what both those guys have had to do for the last 2 or 3 game years.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a great supply center chart. This is one of the best ones.
Yep.
One of the best graphs we've had lately.
Fleet
Look at all those
set.
lines. Look at all those lines going different directions. That's just too awesome.
Yep. It's like watching the stock market.
All right, spring 1914.
Brandon finally got a fleet back after all this time.
Yeah.
Of having no fleets. All right. Well, tactically speaking, Brandon is in better shape. Plus, Italy was worried about the French. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not betting against Brandon in a tactical battle if that's what it's going to boil down to. And he's going to lose St. Petersburg, going to lose Berlin, but so long as he can keep Italy down, and EF can't figure themselves out completely, I really like his position.
It's hard. It's hard to top the board when you're Russia and you've lost one of your two halves of your empire. It's hard to do. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's hard to do. Mm-hmm. Usually, when they top the board, they've got some force in Scandinavia and some force going on in the east.
Yeah, right? It's unusual. See, not impossible, but unusual to see a Russian top without Scandinavia.
Now, diplomacy could come into play here because there is still a cagey relationship between EF.
Right.
And so there could be some diplomatic flexibility here that Brandon can exploit. He's certainly making the right moves tactically, which, as you said, was very much to be expected.
Mm-hmm. Gets Bulgaria here. He's blown up Bulgaria right after having blown up Khan the previous turn. Keeps Trieste. Has Greece in a position where he can take it in the future. This is really, really good for Brandon. And like I said, he can lose St. Petersburg. He can lose Berlin, but I don't really see how he ends up losing still beyond the entire board coming together and saying, we don't want Brandon to win. We're going to make someone else win, but we take something on that margin for it to happen.
I still think it's doable. This is an time limited game.
Right.
Chris Kelly's back up at 10 now.
Yeah, plus 2.
Whoa, where did that come from?
Well, he took Berlin.
Yeah.
Berlin and St. Petersburg. Right. I don't know. I thought Chris was on 7 for some reason coming into this turn.
I like the position that Chris Kelly has here from a defense standpoint, but it's going to be difficult to move to get larger from here.
Yep. Brandon, on the other hand, can take Greece now if he wants, right?
Yep, correct. That's what I was saying last turn.
And Hank is whenever he wants it.
Plus side for Chris, is that he did build correctly this turn, did put the fleet in London, which he needed to go into English Channel, lock that down forever, and then convoy the army into Norway.
We draw. Well, all right, David, I'm going to start with you this time. First of all, right result.
It is the right result. Brandon played a spectacular game. Really knew what he was doing when he was in bad shape and was able to make some things happen. Frankly, Chris, I'm just going to argue that Chris should have gone and sealed that part and not worry so much about the French because he wasn't able to continue with that attack. Now, maybe it would have worked better if he hadn't flubbed a couple of moves, and Carthage, you may be right there, if he had succeeded in those moves, but he didn't succeed in the moves.
Right.
So figure out some way to get out of that instead of having – and I know I called it Sitzkrieg, but 6 or 8 moves of not doing anything isn't good for England or France's chances of winning the game.
Right. And I think that's the real issue with both Ben's play and Chris's play in the end was none of them were willing to say, look, we have no chance of winning if we stay here. This game is about winning or nothing. I may as well take the chance that you lie and betray me here if it means that I have a chance to win the game, rather than doing, as you said, the Sitzkrieg for 6 to 8 turns, doing nothing while Brandon went from height to height to height to height. And as we know, Brandon is a troublesome player to get back in the box when you let him out of the box. He is good at this game, and he showed it here. And, yeah, I mean, he was the deserving winner by far.
He definitely played the best game. I'm not sure this game is over. It's over because the player said it was over.
Right. That's what I was getting at earlier. Because EF diplomatically could not come together. If there was a willingness for EFI to happen and bring this back down to like an 8-8-8-8 type board or something like that, then there's a chance, right? But you have EF frozen and Russia in a tactical battle against the Italians. That was why I thought Brandon was going to win for certain.
And Ben's problem was, I mean, really, Chris had some better options to make. Ben didn't have great options. He couldn't really go and slam into the Italians because that just helps Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't really have great options here. He had to hope that Chris would disengage and go deal with Brandon, and that somehow that would give Ben an opportunity to take advantage. And that's a difficult needle to thread when Brandon has gotten so big. Frankly, we're overdoing this. Brandon just really played very well.
Yep.
As he always does.
He
And
showed
that's primarily how he won this game, is that he's really good.
Yep.
Yeah, he had to show elements of every aspect of this game, and there were moments of the tactics, obviously some good strategic thinking, but for me the most impressive thing was the diplomatic relations that were built. And I think if you compare that, there was chaos in the East, but Brandon was able to utilize that and compare that or contrast that to the West, where there was friction, and that was not able to be overcome by the other players. And for me, that was the difference in this game.
Although I will say again, it was a patty cakes there for a while between England and France, and I think that they would have been both better off, including Chris, if they'd continued to do that and just race it.
Mm-hmm. Right. There are two things I would say to that. One, 100% agreed that had they chose to race it, not a bad outcome for either of them, especially when you aren't 100% confident in your ability to win a tactical battle on Backstabber being an interface you're not comfortable with, right? That's one. But two, I'll say, going to your point about how ENF played the end game, I do think, honestly, if you're Ben, you should probably be taking, when there's a great game that Marcus covered, Captain Me, Marcus, whatever you want to call him, where it was the Web Diplomacy World Cup from a few years ago that went on for 100 game years, where one power desperately needed to win the game. Multiple powers needed to desperately win the game, right, in order for them to win the overall championship. So they were constantly just walking back massively, giving up plenty of centers, plenty of position in order to give themselves a chance to win the game. I think that because of the fact that Ben's units were useful to nobody in stopping Brandon from winning the game, which is otherwise basically fait accompli at that point, if that wasn't going to happen, that he should have probably found a way to walk back a little bit and then let the game play out while E and I take on Brandon, knock him back down to 8 or something like that, and then rebuild your position there. Pick someone to work with, whether it's Italy against, pick Russia, try to bring Russia back on side, work with him against England, or whatever have you, and make something happen, rather than just, once again, doing this Blitzkrieg as you described.
Well, it was a fun game, and I hope that it encourages everyone to get involved with some club play. It's a fantastic way to play the game. You get to really get to know the players. You do it a lot in BDL, but it's even more so whenever you're playing in a club. And it's just a lot of fun. And if you're interested, again, if you'll go to our website, diplobn.com, and we've got a resource there to link out to the face-to-face registry. Great way to find people that are interested in playing face-to-face. Then also just post in the various Discords, and someone will be able to help connect you as well. It's just another easy way. David, we're going to give you a break, and we're going to go ahead, Karthik and I are going to go ahead and bring up our final game of the night. We're going to be watching VDL game 150, and this will be the round 3 game from last weekend. Karthik, let's go ahead and call out our players.
Do it. So in Austria, we have Marcus Lone. In England, we have Josh Hennessy coming to us from Australia. In France, we have Matthew Tatonki coming to us from Portland. In Germany, we have Kylie Foster. In Italy, we have Hannibal TK. in Russia, we have Cody Green going for the rare triple. Impressive. That endurance is no small feat. And in Turkey, we have Teague Eppright making his return to the broadcast. So those who know each other well, let's see how they play with the other 5.
All right, here we go. Spring 1901. I'll go ahead and call these out. Karthik, you can do the analysis.
Sure.
So first up, we've got pretty standard openings in the West. We've got really standard openings all around. If you consider the modern meta, the only one that's not like probably statistically the most common would be the Turkish opening.
No, I would be surprised if in the past year it is not the most common one.
Oh, I would agree. I would say within the past 2 years, that probably is the most common.
Yeah, the only other interesting thing of note is Munich Holds, which used to be pretty common back in the day, but isn't really common anymore. Now people like to do things with it, whether it's Tyrolia or Ruhr. But yeah, nothing too far out of the ordinary.
Yep. So a lot of times this will be a wait and see kind of approach, creates a little bit of a slower game, allows the game to kind of breathe a little bit before we start to see activity. In the fall, we've got starting in the West, Josh Hennessy attempting a convoy into Belgium, taking Norway. France takes the Iberian centers. Germany goes for their standard builds, choosing to bounce Russia in Sweden. That's always one of the hot spots I try to keep an eye on. Looks like we're loaning Trieste, Austria, and Italy, showing early signs of cooperation. The strongest signal for that, of course, being the move of Ionian into Aegean, the delay of taking Tunis for a tempo play against Turkey. The main thing I'll be watching for is whether or not Russia is going to be joining in. Is this a rat, or is this just going to be an AI versus RT? What's your read on that, Karthik?
I think we're probably going to see an air, at least in the short term, and then we'll probably see the air versus, if I had to guess, whoever Germany wants to choose, probably going to be an EG versus air, if I had to guess. Yeah.
Looks like we've got first game for Kylie in Germany. So Kylie, welcome. If this is truly first game, very first game of diplomacy, really great to have you joining in the hobby. Keep on, David. We're going to add you back. David, we've had pretty standard openings between these on the board, and no fireworks yet. So we're looking to start to see some resolution perhaps in winter of spring of 1902. In the winter, we've got all the right moves from Germany, or right builds. We've got Kiel and Belgium. We've got a build of a fleet in Brest and a fleet in London, so perhaps a hot spot to watch between England and France, but not necessarily so. And then everything else looks pretty typical. We'll just move on to spring 1902. David, why don't you go ahead and take us through here?
Let's see. This is probably the right move for the Turks to knock the Italians out of Aegean. I'm assuming didn't really matter whether the Aegean hit Khan or not, because there was Russian support in the Bull. So I don't think that the Russians were expecting Galicia's to be supported into, however. That's probably not pro-Russian. Let's look at what else is going on here. We've got the Germans. All right, Kylie, this is your first game. It is possible for the Germans to do this and go east and win against the Russians if things turn out right, but it is a dangerous, dangerous play. And maybe this really is a Western triple move. That's the situation in which Germany can get away with this, is in a true Western triple. But you don't have you don't have French army sitting in Picardy and Burgundy in a Western triple. So this is a little bit of a risk to take to go after Cody here as the Russians. But we'll see if it works out for Kylie.
Part of me wonders if it's all a ruse, though. I mean, London to Brest, like, come on, Josh Hennessy. I don't see him making that move. Come on, as an actual mistake.
It's not a mistake. It's just him sitting there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we had the fleets go south as I thought they were going to go. We got Marseille to Piedmont. I don't like Burgundy going to Helgoland, but what can you do? We have
You mean Burgundy going to Belgium?
What did I say?
Helgoland.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I must be exhausted. Burgundy going to Belgium. We have Norway going to St. Petersburg, Denmark to Sweden, a convoy to Livonia. The fleet's moving north like you want them to. Really, really clean Western Triple. If I had to guess, the hammer may drop at some point. I hope it doesn't, especially since it's Cali's first game. But I hope this Western Triple goes on for a while. We see the air reacting to some degree. We have the convoy to Tunis a little bit late. We have Trieste going back to Venice. We have a surprising stab, though, of Russia, with Budapest walking to Romania. And Warsaw is now in a position that it will fall next turn no matter what, so long as it's wanted to.
It's not much of a stab when you can retreat to Serbia.
Yes. Self-stab, I suppose.
If you're going to do all this, then have Trieste go to Serbia. If you're allied with the Italians, then have them go to Serbia. And then it keeps the Russians out. The Russians do take Ankara, though. There wasn't anything that Teague could really do entirely here to help completely. But wow. That retreat, I wonder if that retreat to Serbia it's very common to not realize that certain retreats can happen in the Balkans.
Right. Yeah, the retreat to Serbia is a
very common tactical mistake that all of us have made in the past.
Right. I mean, God knows how many times people try to stab Romania and Bulgaria in the same turn and then look in awe and surprise as Romania walks into Serbia.
Yeah.
Well, could have been what happened here. Net result, though, still +1 army build for Marcus. And we've got army builds all around. Oh, no, we've got one fleet in. Oh, 2 fleets. I just can't read the board. That's all.
Also, you got Brian.
Ignore me. Spring of 1903, Karthik.
Yeah. Well, we have Edinburgh being convoyed to Norway. We have St. Petersburg just slinking into Moscow unopposed. We have Austria and Russia teaming up to defend Warsaw. Did not see that one coming, but nothing can be done to stop it in the fall. We have Finland not being able to walk into St. Petersburg because of a coastal error. That is unfortunate for Cody Green there. We have Ankara taking Constantinople, though, so he can't be too sad. And it can't be retaken because Smyrna moves out into the Eastern Med. Force destroyed. Serbia walks into Romania as we see a nice little conga, daisy chain, whatever you want to call it, happen. And we have Naples moves to Tyrrhenian Sea. So Tunis will be locked down for a bit. But we have an unfortunate guess. Or actually, no, just kidding. Maybe Venice just gets forced. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, Warsaw's awesome until you realize that the English have gotten behind you. And then it's like, well, I wonder if it was even worth it for me to defend Warsaw in that situation. And the answer is probably not. Probably wasn't worth it. Wow. Well, the French are doing what they can to allay German suspicions about the Western Triple because they've moved their armies as far south as they can move, as fast as they can go. So they're trying to play nice with Kylie, and Kylie does take Warsaw now. So Western Triple, Western Triple, Western Triple. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Western Triple generally. However, I will give an exception. If you're a new player, as long as you are aware that you're playing with fire, if your neighbors are willing to work with you as the new player, it's not a bad way to get a good start on the game and kind of get in some reps, get some experience, and you may even learn a lesson about getting stabbed at the end. But yeah, I don't hate it as a new player.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how far it goes. I mean, they're all going to make progress here, it looks like.
Yeah, they're doing well.
So that would take away
the credit, though. Like, they haven't been making some very, very good defensive moves against the Western Triple. It's more stalling the inevitable because of, like, how far advanced they are. But they've been doing their part to make it as long and tedious for the West as they can. So kudos to both Marcus and Hannibal TK right there. And also Cody Green as well. All doing a great job.
Yeah, good call out.
And as long as England and France are making progress, less reason to stab the Germans.
Right.
Now the question is, are the Germans going to make some progress here? Their ability to do so has obviously been slowed, but that's true for all three of the powers.
Well, that could change here now that we've got Austria making some moves into some Italian centers, unless you think this is just an attempt to pass through.
I think that was an attempt to defend it against the Germans.
Okay.
So you had to do something there. The interesting thing is they have cut Turkey in on this, fight the triple thing, and so now he's out there by himself and nobody's near his center. So I think that's kind of fun. Sometimes you just kill the Turks and use the builds if you're the East, but in this case, they're going to go ahead and use that fleet.
That fleet's very valuable.
Yep, it's fun though.
Ooh,
all right, what else
rough.
is happening here?
So we have the fleet in Tyrrhenian Sea getting, sent into Tuscany, which blows up the army. But the French do get Tyrrhenian Sea, so I think that's a fair trade that they'd be happy with. The Turks get into Greece, which is funny, while the Austrians successfully hold on to Trieste, take Tyrolia, in the process lose Bohemia, lose Galicia, but get a free retreat back into Romania. So they go up one. They get a build in Budapest. At the same time, Ukraine holds on for now, cannot hold on forever, though. Baltic Sea slides into Bothnia, making that Russian fleet completely useless. This gives them a lot of control over the board that I'm sure they're happy to have. Edinburgh slides into Yorkshire, though, which is a sign from Josh, I think, that the stab is about to come.
Potentially.
Why do you say that, Karthik?
Because I think the moment he gets to build, it can either go Yorkshire to Wales, London to English convoy into Brest, or it can just be fleet into the North Sea convoy.
Well, so far,
no build. So
yeah, so far no build. So we've got +2 for Matthew Tanchi. We've got continuation. Builds at least would imply that of continuing with the triple, but there is some flexibility there. I have seen the French occasionally use that build in Marseille to swing up into England, so I'll be watching for that. David, would you even consider that here, or do you think it's better to just stick with what's working?
Well, it's hard to know exactly with the diplomatic situation. The Turks building the army smart. I guess that makes sense to go to Armenia. I'm trying to see if there's any crack in the eastern wall for French to think, oh, these guys aren't getting along anymore. But I'm not sure I'm seeing that. So I think France. Let's see. Yeah, I think I would probably stick with it a little bit longer and see if I can get into the Ionian and stuff, or into Italy. I think I probably would.
Well, let's see if they do.
Okay. Although with the Turks still working with everyone, there's not going to be much progress here.
Right.
Frankly, not much interesting happening here until we see a stab.
Yeah.
It's taking Tyrolia is relevant. Let's see. Is that the Turks trying to support the French in to Naples?
Yeah,
yes.
I think it is. More interestingly, though, the Turks get a build.
So the Turks are now the Turks are the one power that you can argue doesn't really care about the Western Triple and hopes that it does well until it doesn't.
Right.
And then Turkey gets big. But when you're so sort of small and spread out like this, I'm not sure that really applies to it.
So we've got Teague kind of telling us that negotiations in this game were crazy. That's been my experience too. Sometimes we'll look at the board and we'll be like, man, there's not a lot of activity going on. And in many cases, those are the times when the negotiations are the most intense. So this feels to me, just my experience in games like this, to be one that's super tense for every player on the board, and a lot of times there's a lot of uncertainty about what could be going on here. Makes for a really fun game to play in, even if the moves don't necessarily indicate that. But we've got a build from Smyrna, and we've got a disband from Sev, and I do agree with Desperate Air. Germany's doing well for their first game. Yeah, that's really good to see.
Yep.
All right, David, I think you've got this year.
Well, because the Eastern Alliance fell apart here, that gives all sorts of opportunities. So the English to Sev, the Germans to Romania, the French into Ionian. So the fact that the Western Triple is sticking together here is very relevant because the other parties did not. So we shall see if there's still some advantages. But you see, the convoy from Edinburgh is already into St. Pete. So you've got English, you got 3 English armies now in Russia. That's pretty much exactly what you want if you're the English in a Western Triple situation. Germans into places like Galician Romania is what they want. French into Ionian is what they want with Tyrrhenian. So this is all really sort of textbook Western Triple cool behavior. And we'll see how far that can go. But yeah, good for you, Kylie, that you're participating in a fun, sort of successful alliance. And Kylie is not leaving themselves open very well. I mean, they got a fleet and keel that can be defensive. So, good.
All right. Well, we've got the classic German army in Romania in fall of 1906. That's always fun. Man, this is not typical to see a Western Triple proceed this far and stay together. So very entertaining to watch.
Now that there are builds, we shall see. And France doesn't have one. That's usually the real question is if you're one of the 3 and you don't get a build. But England did not build offensively against you, so you're still okay.
That army is not fun, though.
It's clearly defensive, though.
Sure.
I mean, look,
because it goes to Wales. I mean, that's pretty defensive. It can't be convoyed anywhere from there.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we are continuing on. There's some we're kind of going through this quickly, but I'll encourage viewers to go ahead and rewatch this a little bit and look at the tactics. There's some good tactical decisions here from the West moving in through the Balkans in what is not a very common, like a lot of times diplomacy players will see patterns played more frequently over and over, and you can kind of make really quick reads because you've got that experience. This is not a position that's as common, so it's fun to watch our players make those decisions.
When you go back and watch this, folks, it's not just moves, it's diplomatic moves. The Russians helped the Germans earlier into things. The Italians are now helping the French into things. The Turks are helping the Germans into things. The Eastern powers are being convinced to help Western powers do things. This could be a series of revenge things. This could be a series of, well, at least I'm playing the game somehow. I'm being involved somehow. I'm king-making. This could be, in Turkey's case, I'm going to get reasonably big, and then these guys are going to fight each other, and then I've got a shot. Lots of interesting diplomatic things happening, and it's not just tactical.
Yeah, and that's why it's called the game of diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Karthik, I think this one's you.
It's a beautiful, beautiful move set from all involved to cut the necessary supports, hold where you should, support yourself to hold where you should from the West, and then support yourself where you need to guarantee the Budapest Falls. All the right moves are being made. Bravo to guarantee Venice as well and Naples. Like, this is like the exact sort of pace of progress that you want as a Western Triple. You're seeing the moves being made in the right way to guarantee safety.
Okay, I'm going to be the dissenting opinion here. Germany is going to be 0 this turn, right? They've lost 2.
Yeah, they're. Oh wait, which was the second one they lost?
Warsaw and Romania.
Oh, I didn't notice that they were losing Warsaw.
When
is like
you are
a-
Germany, you have to be bigger than the other two.
Yep.
You are now the next plate on the menu.
Yeah.
+2 England, +3 France, +0 Germany is not what you're looking for. Unless they're going to end the game here or something.
Well, this if they do not end the game here, then just take everything that Karthik said, but only apply that for England and France.
Mm-hmm.
All
They
right.
could stab each other, though. Just saying.
Yeah, they might. I mean, there's fleets coming.
Hey, there you go. Look at that.
All right. Maybe you get a little west on west action.
And the answer is no.
Oh,
Not
that's
yet.
very nice.
Not
I
yet.
like that.
Not yet. They're sort of cagily defending against
Oh,
each
is
other.
this going to be like a 10-10-4 type deal?
Maybe
Okay.
so. Maybe they're going to set this up because they're both letting. They're both. I mean, Germany's taken out the Austrian center, so maybe
Yeah,
this is
Bulgaria's
gonna be
voluntarily walked out. So,
Sev did not go to Armenia.
yep.
Yeah, this feels like heading towards an arranged end. The
I like
three
it. I like
players who
it.
have enjoyed playing with each other.
This is good. This is good.
All right.
I don't know if it's good, but it's okay occasionally. You
Yeah.
wouldn't want to do this all the time, but it's okay.
Right. But I mean, it's Kylie's first game, so I'm happy that they get. Yes. Woo!
Convoy to Syria.
All right.
Let's go.
It's a good way to end the night.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. I love that.
All right. Well done to our triple 10-10-10 split. Josh, Matthew, Kylie, especially Kylie, first game ever.
Mhm.
Well played. Very entertaining. Karthik, I'm going to go to you this time. Is this the right result?
Yep, this is the right result. I'm very, very happy with it. Give the first-time player. I'm very, very happy they ended on 10. If you guys, if there's a stab here, who knows what happens? I think the person who stabs probably is the one who ends up. With it being time limited, they probably end up getting the board top. But I'm very happy with how the result ended.
Yeah, and the reason that they were able to do this was because the East turned on each other.
Yep.
Starting with Teague, and I think he probably thought that was only his only shot to have a legitimate game.
Right.
And so he had to hope that if he started the ball rolling, which he did,
Mm-hmm.
that there would be some kind of stab in the West. Maybe he could come back and get it bigger, or at least compete for second or something like that. So I can't really blame him. But this is what happens. That it was already a little bit precarious, and he basically started the whole ball rolling of the the almost completely unopposed Western Triple taking over the Balkans.
Well, I think that was a very safe gamble. Like the majority of Western Triples, someone is going to stab the other. So this was an atypical result. I agree with what you're saying, David, but I also don't necessarily disagree with the decision that led to that.
Yep.
Anyway, it certainly was fun to watch from a tactical and diplomatic point of view, and a great first game for Kylie, as we said.
Well, I will end the coverage of this game by saying I am going to recommend people go back and rewatch a game that involves a Western Triple. And that may be the first time I've ever done that in all of these games. So well done to all of our players. And that does bring us to the end of tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed it, please give the show a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. This is one of our main missions here is to try and grow the hobby. We've had several players. We saw Robert Schupa play earlier today, discovered the game and got involved with the hobby through this channel. So definitely have seen it help to grow the hobby. So appreciate anything you can do there. Adding in some comments, stuff like that all helps with the algorithm. But even more important than that, if you enjoy high quality diplomacy and want to see more commentary tomorrow, I believe it's at 2:30 Eastern time, somewhere around there. We've got a broadcast of the World Diplomacy Championship, which is going on right now in Thailand. We will be covering those games and definitely encourage everybody to tune in and watch as the next face-to-face world champion is crowned. And if you want to get involved and play, we talked about it at the start of the show, but Summer Classic is coming up, I believe, next weekend. And we've got several upcoming tournaments, including Weasel Moot, which all three of us will happen to be at. We'd love to see you there. So, David, Karthik, I'm going to give y'all each an opportunity to talk through your thoughts on what we saw today. And then we'll close out the show.
We go first, David?
I can. I mean, what we saw was 4 very different games, and that's exactly what we like to see in diplomacy. And that's because, you know what? There's not just 4 ways for the game to go. There's about 444 ways for the game to go. And that is exactly why this game is so awesome. You can see a 10-10-10-4. You can see Brandon coming back from basically nowhere to somewhere. You know, you just see all sorts of things. You can see, you know, stabs that work, stabs that didn't work, alliances that worked, alliances that, you know, fell apart because of, you know, whatever. You've seen misorders and how miscues and misorders can affect the end of the game. You've seen all sorts of things tonight. If this is the first time you've watched this and you're just learning the game, you are about to embark on a wonderful journey.
Yep. Well said, David. Couldn't have said it better myself. I think the things that I want to draw attention to is, one, the focus on club play. Like, that was one of my favorite parts of this particular broadcast, is the decision to highlight something that hasn't been talked about as much on these virtual broadcasts as it should be. Because at the end of the day, like, club play is, like, you know, the lifeblood of the hobby. Because as great as these tournaments are that happen once a year in every single locale, having these games that are once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever the thing may be, having that happen, having this local community of players that sort of builds upon itself once it reaches critical mass, is so important for the future of the hobby. So if you're in a position where you can help a club come into existence, or if you are nearby a club and want to participate more and drive that club up, I highly recommend taking the chance and seeing how it goes.
Absolutely. Well, David, Karthik, thank you both for joining. Had a really great time, and I'd like to thank each of you who are in Dip Chat for joining. Really active chat tonight, always fun. And for those of you watching after the broadcast is no longer live, thank you for watching as well. Really means a lot, and we appreciate it very much. David, I'm going to let you close out the show tonight. If you'll sign us out.
All right, folks, enjoyed the broadcast. Looking forward to the broadcast tomorrow. In the meantime, stay safe and stab well.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.